Sorry, Dean. Stay where you are.
And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel, where, as you heard, Vic has just scooted in a little. We are a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy at the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games and help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but the most fun one is sitting down with the designers of those games and playing those games. Today we are playing In The Bluelight, which is by a designer who I absolutely love and adore. Not just their designs, but specifically the adventures they do are absolutely amazing. I think they're some of the most singular Mork Borg adventures and other adventures that exist out there, and that's Chris Bissette. Chris, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, and tell us a little bit about In The Bluelight.
Hi, I'm Chris Bissette. You can find me on Twitter, being very noisy, at Pangalactic. I run a website called Loot the Room. You can find all that stuff at lootstheroom.io. In the Bluelight is my second big Mork Borg adventure. We played Treasures of the Troll King on this channel about a year ago. In the Bluelight is a frozen, frostbitten dungeon crawl deep beneath the... Ow! Sorry, my cat is biting my leg. Deep beneath the ice of the Kyrgyz wastes, we are going to go and try and dig up a frozen artifact that might prevent a future misery or roll back one of the miseries gripping the world, hopefully. Or we might just die frozen and alone.
There we go. I'm super excited to play. We usually have the designer running the game, but lots of times when we have Mork Borg Adventures, we have Sean F. Smith step into the GM seat. Sean, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online. Also, if you have any content or caution thoughts that you think might be good for viewing audience to know, why don't you go ahead and drop those now.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. As no doubt you've just learned, my name is Sean Smith, as he and him, and I am a magician, games designer, writer, general menace, and very excited to be here again today. Chris's writing in this is really cool, and I think the way that they take concepts and just shove them down into a tiny little booklet's beautiful. And so I'm here to help show you some wonderful gory stuff. Although this is primarily a fantasy game, it is very much a bleak fantasy horror. So fans of all manner of things, probably quite a few who might be trying to burn some time before a very big game drops tomorrow, might be enjoying certain stuff that we're around. But expect there to be grimness, both at standard levels of gore. It's going to be relatively funny in a way, in that it's going to be we're probably going to be quite lighthearted with it, but it is going to be a bit gross. There's going to be grim stuff. There'll probably be frozen bodies we'll come across, and invariably I'm going to talk about relatively disgusting bodily functions as well. That's just quite likely. So if any of them are likely to upset you, make sure you have a nice drink nearby to calm yourselves down. I don't always run horror games. I do a variety of other things. I'm currently shopping around my oldish game, Quarrel and Fable, which I'm showing here now for the purposes of the screen, which I ran at Groglove last weekend, and is one of those things where I haven't touched it in a few years, and then I come back to it and go, oh, I quite liked that. So if you want something that's horrifically derivative of the Fighting Fantasy books, then yeah, look up Quarrel and Fable. So that's me.
Awesome. I am super excited to have you back with us. I love the way you pump up the imagery for any of the games that you ever run on stream. It's always super satisfying. Speaking of all the horrible things that we're excited to encounter, wait, that was a horrible segue. Vic, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you on. One of my favorite people to explore those things with. You know exactly
to myself.
You know exactly what I meant.
Warnings are needed for.
Yeah. You know exactly what I meant, and you loved it. Vic, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online.
Vic. I'm a horror writer, but outside of that, I make games, and apparently I'm online at Major Tomorrow, and outside of making games, I now am a talent agent. So
Ooh.
representing hair, makeup, and mostly rock and roll.
Mostly rock and roll. Awesome. Super excited to have you with us. As always, been too long since we got a chance to play a game together. And then we've also got with us playing Mork Borg for the first time, live here on stream with us, Nevin Holmes. Nevin, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online.
Hey there. My name is Evan. I use he, they pronouns. I'm a queer tabletop role-playing game designer. I've designed some pretty cool stuff with, I think, right up that way, Chris before, Kitchen Nightmares. It's extremely cool.
Yeah, it is.
And I design a lot of weird experimental games. You might have heard of Gun and Slinger. And you can find my stuff at nevin.games. You can buy physical copies over at dinoberryjam.com.
Awesome. And you're going to be back in a couple of weeks. We're going to play Just a Cause,
Yes.
right? Your new and upcoming game. So I'm
Hey, there
very
it is.
excited. Yeah. And we played Gun and Slinger on stream a little while ago. So
We
if
did.
you want to matriculate over to our YouTube channel, you can find that video. It was a super fun stream. With that said, if you want to back any of our stuff or find any of our stuff, you can find it at +1EXP on across most social medias. And if it's not that, it's Tony +1. And that usually means +1EXP was taken, which is pretty rare, but happens. The other thing I'd love to draw your attention to early on is we are currently helping Nuclear Obelisk fund 13 Hunters, which is a system agnostic bounty hunter supplement. It's about to go into its last week of funding. It could absolutely use your love and your support over at ttrpg.link /13H. You could drop these into Mork Borg really easily, or into any traditional dungeon diving or grim fantasy, science fiction, or other games, because it's a science fantasy system agnostic zine. Dom's information design on all of their games is just tremendous. So check out Nuclear Obelisk's 13 Hunters over on GameFound right now. I'll drop that link in, but you didn't come here to hear about that or hear about how amazing all of us are. You came here to watch us probably die, frozen and mostly alone, up in the waist. So I'm going to hand things. I'm going to hand things over to Shauna Smith after we talk about lines, veils, and the X card, which are the three things we use to kind of keep everything focused and comfortable here on stream, especially as we're diving into horrific spaces. Lines are things that may happen in the world of our game, but don't happen in the course of our play of it. Veils are things that may happen in the play of our game, but they're handled in this very specific way. And then the X card is the ability for us to stop, pause, identify what an issue might be, and then pull it out and move forward in a different direction anytime we need to. We have a strong line against sexual violence on the channel, but are there any other lines or veils that you want to name before we get started playing? Anybody?
Yeah. No, like violence against children or like mundane animals. And I would say a veil on like hardcore addiction.
Cool.
I don't tend to like player characters being torturers, but I don't think we're going to do that. Let's not torture people.
Cool.
That's a veil, though, not a line. So
Awesome. We can always add more to those if we need to as we're going. And if you don't want to talk about it on stream, you can always message that directly over to Sean. But with that said, I'm going to hand things over to Sean to take us in the blue light.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. So for those of you that have never played Mork Borg before or aren't aware of it in general, both in the crowd as well as Nevin,
Hello.
The world is not doing great. A series of prophecies by the two-headed basilisk have been coming true. Nobody has seen the sun in years, and the world is just slowly getting worse and worse and worse. The end of the world is inevitable, and it's getting closer. But today we're a little bit more hopeful in that we're going to go off on a very, very cold quest to somewhere that isn't very widely known about, in order to try and find an artifact that might be able to roll back some of the effects of the miseries that have actually been befalling the world. So before we do that, I'm keen to hear who we are today, in terms of what your character is like. Let us begin with Chris, for you have also made the rest of the stuff I'm doing, so I will start with you here. Who are you? What's cool about you?
I am Torn. That's my name, not just my demeanor. The heretical priest. I come from some temple ruins in the Valley of Unfortunate Dead, and I'm being hunted by the two-headed basilisks of the one true faith. I am cowardly and conflicted, and apparently an alcoholic, but we won't lean into that too hard. I have the red puffy nose, and that's the last time we'll mention it.
Nice. Vic, who are you going to be today?
I will be Grin today. I am a child that escaped the orphanarium. Star smiled at my birth. You know, I'm lazy, ruthless, smell constantly of like a very particular rotten yogurt. I've never touched it in my life, but there's always something that sour sweet smell that follows me around. And I always end up about 2 inches away from your like elbow, regardless of how tall you are. There's definitely a separation problem. I am not a child. I just appear as one. Because we all know I love being small in games.
Excellent news.
And
Nevin,
horrible
who are you
gangly
today?
teeth everywhere. Oh, it's that thing.
Gorgeous, amazing. Yeah, Nevin, who are you going to be today?
I'm Carva, the heretical priest. I come from one of the many Graven Tosk thief tunnels. So I hang out in tunnels and stuff, which is cool. I am also hunted by the two-headed basilisks of the one true faith. So I guess I cause trouble. And you can often find me hanging out in ruins, you know, just chilling out, raving, screaming, howling, absolutely losing my shit. I am cruel and suspicious, and one of my hands is a rusting hook.
Ooh. Amazing. Mork Borg as a game isn't one that sort of expects you to like memorize loads of canon lore, but there is like an interesting thing from it in that we've got Torn, who's from like the Valley of the Unfortunate Dead, which is kind of down in like the southwest. Graven Tosk is like this huge cemetery in the middle of a massive forest called Sarkash, kind of like to the north center. A question for you both: are you from this like? You're each heretical. Are you heretical in the same direction or in different directions?
I would like to pitch that we're heretical in the same direction up to a point, and there's just like a few things that we just absolutely don't agree on, no matter what. I don't care what they are.
Look, as somebody who grew up in the area that you live, I can't imagine that there's any local sects
I've never
that you're riffing off of right now.
Maybe we're both heretical because we both think that Verhu's word isn't always right. That's why we're heretical.
Yeah, that's the key.
One of us thinks one of us is dragging the other one out onto the ice to look for this artifact that they swear exists and can prove their point, and the other one is coming along just to be able to say at the end, I fucking told you so. You're wrong.
I love it. I think that's really good. That's perfect.
Excellent stuff. And Tony, who are you today?
I am playing as, you know what? I don't know how do you pronounce a K and a V next to each other.
Cover.
Kava?
I think, yeah.
I'm
Patrick Rothfuss,
Kavetin. And I woke up on a derelict ship that was on the slowly kind of rolling across the gray sea with nothing but my teeth, a hook for a hand, and no other crew members in sight, just some grisly old bones. Who knows where those came from? Yeah, hook buddies. Blink. I'm a little clumsy and dull-witted, but I do love a good snack. I'm like incredibly beefy with very skinny legs. Is what you also mostly need to know.
You remind me Skip's like day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a small but vicious dog with me. He's definitely a yappy dog also too.
What kind of dog?
It's definitely a Chihuahua something blend. And what the other part is, you're entirely unsure.
It's a Shih Tzu.
You might be.
Or a Chihuahua Pomeranian.
The problem is you're not even sure whether it was another dog. Like that's the real confusion. the rattier aspects of a Chihuahua have been like cranked up to 11, but it is far thicker and furrier than you would ever expect. Also too. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. So I do love that this is a character that I rolled up who has just. I'm just going to make a commentary on Mork Borg that I love. I have 1 HP, which is represented by skipping leg day. I am incredible. But my stats. This is probably the best stats on a character I have ever rolled up. I have 0 negatives and I have a +3 out the gate.
Oh my god.
And I have like 8 different ways that I do damage on this one sheet. Like I cannot get hit at all. I will die.
The definition of a glass cannon.
Yeah, I am, and I'm not necessarily a caster, but I am really good at dealing out damage. But oh man. Good thing I have plate armor, so like, I'm inside of a tank. But if anybody peels that tank open, I'm just dead.
Excellent.
This is potentially my favorite scum birther character that I've ever received.
The
My
first
favorite
enemy.
thing about people who skip leg days is that they have the body shape of a carrot
Yeah. Sure.
Or a Dorito.
or a
Mm. It's
They've
important.
got that taper, but it goes all the way down to the feet.
The first enemy we come up against is going to show up with a can opener.
Just crank me out. Scoop
Yeah,
me,
very,
scoop
very
me out
likely.
like a carrot.
Tony, does your dog have a name?
I'm going to name it after my half Chihuahua dog that exists in real life. And its name is Zazamus, who is yapping upstairs right now. I can hear them in the background. But we call them Zazie for short.
Nice. And what was your name again? Was it
It's Kvetin, which is
Kvetin.
probably not how, like I said, that can't be how that's pronounced, but it is
Kvetin.
Kvetin.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds close enough.
I can
Excellent stuff.
spell it phonetically, so like it seems like you're correct. Like my brains can put those words together.
Yeah, and often the strangest sounds in Scandinavian languages to English speaking ears tend to be the vowels anyway, so I think
Yeah.
we're fine.
We're good.
Amazing stuff. So you have what? It's most likely to be your priests in this point who have been slyly approached by a veiled priestess of Ark. I'm reading the box text here because Chris is good with words, as you're about to see. A veiled priestess of Ark. Ark being one of the heads of one of the two-headed basilisks. The female, who is often known as she, has got a head of truth and a head of lies, or head of deception. And Ark claims to have spoken to the second head, which doesn't speak as often. And at her behest, you venture west as bidden. The basilisk has whispered word of an artifact buried beneath the ice, one Verhu knows nothing of, something that could roll back the clock on the miseries he spake into being. Return it to the priestess, and maybe the world need not die yet. But hurry, the thaw comes fast, but the freeze comes faster. And if you're too slow, you'll be sealed forever inside the ice vaults of Kurgus. And then that's like the bit at the beginning of the thing where you just suddenly get like, dang!
The frost creeps
Wow.
across the screen and then the ice shatters the title away.
Yeah, exactly stuff. So everyone has, before you've even got here to this icy wastes, everybody has heard at least some things. So if everybody could take a D12 for me.
Oh yeah, I'll need dice.
And then roll it that way. So dice-wise, you'll mostly need, if you've got weapons that deal particular damage, you'll need a dice of that. D20s are going to be most of what you're going to roll. Oh my god, you've got the digital dice roller.
I keep seeing that thing going around. I really want it.
This is the first time I'm getting to use it on stream, so I'm super excited.
Oh,
Wow.
Does
I
it,
was,
how's the clicky clacky?
Oh my
factor
god,
on
it's
it?
so good. Let's see if we can get a little Foley. I don't know if it's gonna. We can.
Oh, this is an ASMR stream
Ooh,
now.
that quick.
Crisp.
beautiful. So you're mostly going to be rolling D20s. If you have plate armor, you'll be rolling D6s to defend on that. If you've got like moderate armor, that's D4s. Anything else armor-wise is D2, which is any dice, and you read it as odd as 1 and even as 2. So I suggest the D12 because it looks nice when it rolls. But function, you need all of those ones. So let us begin. Tony, what did you roll out of 12?
Out of 12. I rolled a 2.
You rolled a 2. You have heard through your discussions with this priestess, who's again like wearing a veil, and the veil at this point is essentially made from like torn up strips of like reptilian skin. It's hard to tell if it is just like a load of snakes that have sort of been like woven together, or if it's something a bit broader, like maybe like a crocodile that's sort of been like peeled apart. And through discussions with her, Kvetin has learned that there is a mirror of ice that will steal your likeness. Do not gaze upon it. That's what you have learned. Nevin, what did you roll?
You got an 11.
An 11. Removing the artifact requires a price paid in blood. Is what you have heard. Cool. Vic?
Got a 5.
A 5. An ancient man lives in a ruined room. Fear him and avoid him. And Chris?
I got 9.
9. Anthelia has created hundreds of refugees who swarm over the ice. Some have taken up residence in the vaults, and they won't welcome visitors. Anthelia there is the queen of Kurgus, an almost immortally beautiful woman who has many, many suitors, and when invariably they fail, she has them beheaded often, because she's quite picky, as is her wont. So in this, we like smash cut forwards, just huge expanse of white. The sky above is almost it's to borrow a metaphor, it's the color of a television set to a dead channel, just old enough that it was a sort of staticky color rather than just this like horrid bright blue. But the ice is kind of that like bright blue of the sort of digital era of dead televisions. And it's at a point where it's only after a few moments with that we can actually see just these tiny little specks, which are the 4 of you and a dog and various other things you've kind of got on a sled that are just like tromping through. You are wearing enough stuff like over the top to kind of clothe for this, but like those of you who have beards and the like have entirely like frozen solid, and even like tiny little chunks of the actual hair are just snapped off. Those of you without beards have an utterly like red raw upper lip, just from like all of the snot that's just been like dribbling out and drying and then kind of like just, I was going to say dehydrating, but evaporating. It's not thoroughly windy at the moment, but it is blisteringly cold. As you sort of like trudge on forwards, there's some bits of snow, but for the most part, it's just dead, flat, white ground. Slices of ice thing, different places. There are certain sections that feel like more like you're just walking on an expansive glacier. There's some of the sections where it's just that you're just tramping over. I mean, it looks like it could possibly be even like the runoff from a volcano or something. It's just that lifeless and sparse. Every now and then it looks like you might be able to see like snippets of a plant or something coming up, but instead it's just like legs sticking up from some animal that was just frozen to death quite some time ago. As you trudge, if we're like zooming in on each of you, what does it look like as you're trekking forwards on this?
I think we first see what looks like a giant and ferocious rat dog pulling a sled, but then as we zoom out, we just realize it was a whole lot of effort, and like I'm pushing the sled from behind while the dog just kind of runs on and pulls out a leash. Like it's just like what looked like like powder like pulling up was just a very small amount of snow being torn up as we kind of zoom out. Let's see, Ketvin, beard totally frozen, but very like Mork Borg. You're never actually stylish, but in whatever way that is possible in this moment, the snot and mucus and beard hair have all frozen in kind of a winged fashion. That's quite fetching, in all honesty. And
gross.
I think what we actually see is I've like I stopped the sled. The dog, like Zazie, still like go, doesn't realize I've stopped yet. And I'm breaking off the leg of one of these animals that's just sticking up frozen, so that I can feed it to Zazie later on when we stop.
Excellent stuff. And it's quite a strange sensation as you're like plodding on forwards, where although there's no direct wind at the point in which you're at, you can hear it just like howling endlessly right across the different places. There's both, like, it's both a very, very sharp sound where you can hear it really precisely, and also like it feels like very, very muted and far away, almost as if the sky itself is like sucking some of the volume out of this here. But from a distance, it just like, it sounds cold, which is odd considering you're in a place where you're physically feeling all of this cold. I mean, like your feet feel like solid chunks of rock that you've not noticed the specific details and stuff of them for a while. Even at any point when you're stopping and like massaging the stuff through your boots, you can tell there's foot there, but you can't really feel any of the sense of it.
I've also got a pair of slit glasses on, like, you know, just like wooden boards with like the line in the middle. Like I couldn't afford goggles, but I am very worried about looking in that mirror, and so this is part of my strategy to avoid that also.
Excellent. What's conversation between our two heretics like at this point?
I don't know if there's much conversation.
I had this very striking like thought of like we're arguing about what direction the wind was going to be blowing. Like I was saying, no, it was going to be blowing southwest, not northeast.
We need to decide who's dragged who on this expedition.
Based on what I just said, probably me.
Cool.
I've got all these notes with these predictions, and this one's already wrong.
I think Torn is just like has not dressed for the weather. He's just wearing like the robes and is like just shaking and miserable and just like I've got this mitre that I just keep pulling down over my head, and every time I do I like fade out of sight a little bit and then I realize what's happening and I pull it back up and I'm just like, you said it would be maybe a day. It has been 3 days.
Well, you know the prophecies, days, years, months, weeks, whatever. It's all mutable, right?
No. 3 days is 3 days. I cannot feel my nipples.
Well, whose fault is that?
I blame the dog.
At last, we agree on something.
And as you're like pressing forwards, the like there's a very gentle snowfall. It's soft and it's quiet, and it's like muffling even the sort of like the conversations you have. There's a certain level of like crunch to your feet as you're sort of stepping on the slightly frozen parts of the ground, and also on some of the like gravel that will shift under your weight. And almost like for a moment, the whole world seems to be at peace as you're just within this like nothingness of white, just all of this like lack of color and stuff that sort of like spreads around you. After a while, it sort of passes. It never really seems to properly settle on the ground and build up at any point here. And it's almost like the sky has sort of like burned its way through, because it's like shimmering. It's rippling like green and purple. And you can see this just incredible like aurora shape up ahead of you. Could everybody roll me a d20 and let me know if you get a 1?
I thought that was a 1, but it's a 7.
I got a 20.
That is a 9.
I got a 4.
Nice. This again is one of my favorite things on the early encounter table that I thought for a stream it's unlikely to hit you, therefore the 1 in 20 chance. As you're sort of like seeing all of this aurora, just like an enormous, massive bolt of lightning just like strikes at the ground probably maybe about a mile or so ahead. It's unclear exactly what it is that it was going for. But just this enormous, just like crack, just like shatters almost your ears and your attention as you're walking towards this thing. Had that lightning bolt struck you, it would have dealt D66 damage. So,
Chris.
There are very few things in this adventure that I remember writing because my memory is terrible. I remember that.
It is a glorious thing, but it's possibly even the like as the sound of it sort of like settles in your head, as we're like still just like trudging on. You like the angle that you're moving on, but you can't see where you've come from. You can't see a thing on which you're sort of like going towards. What if like the camera settles on Grin for a while? What do we see there?
You see a large, like almost mushroom of matted hair, of mixed just variety. There's substance in there, and it's tied directly below his neck. He's been drooling, just hungry this entire time. So little droplets go down his essentially makeshift beard to only create a sharp point at the very end. That is a combination of like the traditional yellow snow and a little bit of brackish from like the deep part of how cold sometimes produces blood in your body. So there's at the very end, it's almost an accent of red, and his very voluptuous but very small body kind of expands out infinitely and always right behind probably the heretic, since they're so consumed with each other, just waiting for the moment that he can interject in a very unsavory and just vulgar way. But he remains silent now, kind of just pressing and touching his new accessory of just essentially his own gore, and just petting it affectionately as you would like twirl your hair. His hands are probably completely blue at this point, and it is most certainly a nervous habit, but he still strides on with it.
Beautiful.
Fucking gnarly.
And yeah, you can see up ahead of yourselves, there's just like this V just like moving through the air, like a flock of gulls or something. Probably you can't actually hear them from this distance, heading entirely south. Until then, there's almost like it's like the world blinks. There's just this like immediate shadow that sort of like passes over you and then goes again, and then this absolutely enormous bird, pretty much like the size of a cow, that just like smashes down onto the ground next to you. Long, thin neck, very, 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 very large eyes, that seem almost entirely blue, like borderline like Fremen eyes. This sort of like vivid brightness, and a long, tiny like hook beak at the end of it with like a tiny little bit of like reddish coloring, kind of like a third of the way down, just in the middle there. Absolutely just like smashes down here and just like snaps at yourselves. And the front we've got is Kvetin. Kvetin is the most brightly coloured. So can Kvetin make a defense roll here against a bit of thing coming in? So for those of you who don't know, in Mork Borg, the players make almost all of the rolls. And so instead of I rolling to attack somebody else, the players will roll to defend. Almost everything is made against a difficulty check of a 12, although if you're in heavier armor, that goes up to a 14, and you'll roll and you'll add your agility to that. So, Tony, are you in luck? Have you dodged out of the way of this huge, vast beak?
I rolled a 15.
Oh, that I think the heavy armor brings the difficulties of your defenses up to 14.
I believe you are correct.
Yeah. What's that look like as you literally just get out of the way?
I think it's a like it's not even an intentional thing. Like I bend down to tie a shoelace, and like one of my boots fastenings has gotten loose, and this thing this thing just like cruises right over my head. It's a birdie bird, like a type of bird?
Yes, it's like, it looks like you've got a herring gull, but instead of it being the size of a cat, it's the size of a cow.
That's cool. It drops, it leaves its droppings on my back, and then as I stand up, we see kind of like the frozen pellets of shit slide down deeper into my own pants.
That's great.
Amazing stuff. So currently, after it's sort of like snapped at Kvetin, it's going to launch itself back up the ground, off of the ground again in a moment, to kind of like fly up and away. But there's a spattering of time when you've all got a chance to do something. So what is it that you do?
So this is just like an animal. This is just like a big bird animal thing.
Yeah. So like,
where's this in your fucking notes?
How do
Hang on a second.
how do scrolls work? I have a scroll that lets me speak with animals, and can I just like try and tell it to fuck off?
Probably, yeah. So the way that a scroll will work is you roll a presence check against a value of a 12. If you hit it, then it works. If you fail it, things go bad.
Okay, cool. So I have to roll to make sure the spell doesn't screw me, and then try to do something with that.
Correct.
Okay. This is a dumb idea. I'm gonna do it. I have a +3 presence, so I'm just gonna roll to see if this works. So it's a D20 +3 versus what's my DC? 12, you said? Or
We're aiming for a 12, yeah.
No.
So
I got a 10.
Oh no.
So you could use an omen if you want to.
Oh yeah.
I have 3 of those. What do those do?
So you could do a lot of things with them. I'll let Sean say it rather than me interjecting.
Oh no, go ahead for a second.
I was just say, at least you could re-roll. You could lower the difficulty by band. You can also boost your roll. I feel like there's one other thing that I'm forgetting though.
Let me grab the book.
Oh.
So there are 5 things in total. One of them, I think the simplest one, is the re-roll. You've got lowering a difficulty by 4, and I've always run it that you can lower the difficulty after you've made the roll, so you're within 4 of it now. You can spend 1. You can use it as a standalone bit of armor. So if you would take some damage, you can spend 1.
That's the one I was forgetting.
And that will soak D6 points of damage. If there would be a fumble or a critical hit, you can spend 1 to soak that up as well. And there's a 5th, but I don't remember it. Chris, do you...
max damage with an attack.
Max damage with an attack, yeah. So if you strike something, you can then go...
So yeah, I'll spend an omen so that my scroll doesn't blow up first thing, though that would be extremely hilarious. I really want to tell this bird to fuck off.
Excellent. So speak to animal. What does speak to animals look like?
And these are like in fiction, like actual scrolls, right?
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
So I think Chris, what was your character's name again?
Torn.
So I think Torn is like, wasn't this in your notes? And I'm just like, shut up. And I'm flipping through my notes, and I find a page with this bird, but it's like a child's drawing of the bird, and like a bunch of question marks and kind of like a who's that Pokemon style. And there's a small little scroll that's like open in case of bird. So I open it and I read the words, whatever it is, and then I can talk to the bird. It lets me speak with animals for D20 minutes.
Hey, nice.
So that is 2 minutes. I had 2 minutes.
If that's not long enough.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try and intimidate this bird to fuck off.
Yeah. So I think the way almost in which it sounds like you'll still speak normally, but functionally the act of the scroll itself almost like overlays all of this just additional thing. So functionally you're talking in all animal languages simultaneously, which is just kind of like overlap and echo. And the bird one in this case is just sort of like really, really low, harsh, like sort of noise that just like spits out there. I have spent several years living on the coast, and herring gulls are horrible creatures.
This encounter was
Genuinely grim.
absolutely inspired by my partner being from Blackpool and spending a lot of time in Blackpool with fucking seagulls.
They will steal food out of your hands.
Are these just the same as like seagulls?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
those
they're
things
just-
suck.
They're just
They suck.
awesome.
They suck.
So you were able to do this, and what is it? Obviously, we've got the nuance of your message here, but what's your language? What's your words?
Fuck off!
I don't know. That's what I said I was gonna say.
Oh, it's succinct and to the point, and functionally it does. What it does, though, like realizes that it's not been able to get an easy food and kind of spits back at like chucks up a tiny bit of. It looks almost just like someone's got like some entrails or just like the undigested bits of like some body somewhere that just kind of like splatter on the ground. In as much as it's it's a bit of an insult in this, but then it just like does just take off and like fly off and around, and then this enormous just hot white splat just like splashes directly in Carver's route. So if you first want to roll an agility to dodge it, again you're looking for a d12.
Okay.
D12, you're looking to roll d20 against a difficulty of a 12.
Okay. I have +2 to my agility. That's 20 total.
Oh, nice. So this thing just spatters down at the ground in front of you, kind of like covering maybe like the bottom half of your actual legs, and in a way, because it's not a direct hit, it's quite soothing in a while. This is the warmest thing you felt in a long time. But it's
Torn, come get some of this. It doesn't feel too bad.
It is just this like, it looks like a roiling mess of worms just in the middle of it, just this like hot white slick. And the camera at this point like fades to white, and again up fades from white. Although it's clearly someone's done some like star wipes or something in here, but you can't really tell. There's not really enough contrast. And you've then got like the four of you and the dog just stood there in front of this impossibly tall glacier. It's easily like 150 feet tall or something, and carved directly out of it in this what seems like it may once have been like a natural defile or something, but it's definitely had like very solid worked edges. You can see the entrance to the vault, the vaults themselves, like you can see from the doorway that it's carved like directly into the glacier itself. It's worked as if it's been worked stone, but rather than actually someone having like constructed things and put them there, it's clearly just like had all of these just like lines gouged into the sides of it. It's kind of semi-translucent. The whole part from here looks and like feels almost like you've just like moved the bricks ever so slightly off, like you've accidentally clicked the wrong layer on Photoshop and like dragged a thing just off. And there's a thing that you can kind of see just a little bit behind yourselves. But other than this, there is just this route into the darkness, with you all stood outside. What are you going to do?
I lick the door.
Yes.
Just get a taste, a sense of who's been here before.
Can you roll me a toughness check here?
I would love to. I would love to roll a toughness check here.
Didn't even have to triple dog dare you to do it.
I know. I'm gonna make him eat something inside the dungeon.
We just had a great opportunity to play to do that.
True. Something that doesn't eat back though.
Yeah. Good luck, I guess.
Everything bites back.
Just go in biting stuff.
I rolled a 17. Sorry.
Amazing. Especially considering you have a single hit point.
I'm gonna have to pull my tongue off and it killed
And
me.
die. Yeah.
And yeah, you can like. It's actually like it's quite a pleasant taste. It's almost tastes like a little bit like spring onion or like salad onions, just when they're like very, very fresh. And there's this kind of like sharpness to it. Although you do realize, even as quickly as this whole thing is like numbing on your tongue, that if at any point you stop in the motion, your tongue will just stick. And as you pull away, there is like a little chunk that comes off the very, very end of your tongue, probably only like maybe a layer or two of skin that's just there, and it just like stands out as this like tiny bright red spot.
What taste buds did he lose? What can he no longer taste?
Umami.
Oh god, I used to
Oh
know
no! That's the important one.
That's the best taste.
So yeah, Kvetin is without the very, very tip of his tongue. It's a bit painful, but only as painful as like the same as like burning the top of your mouth on like an over hot toasty or something. And yeah, but you can see beyond this, and you realize even at this point the door isn't a door, but rather it's a sort of like open invitation, like a doorway that has been carved in and outwards to look as if it were a door. And you just have this long dark corridor ahead of yourself.
Maybe we should knock.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
You want just to come here so you can knock?
Grin kind of just walks up and takes pulls off the chunk from the hair and just starts to use it to hit the door.
There's like one of the things that you sort of notice with that, the sound kind of like echoes and thuds just like within the segment in which it's in. And even after you wait a moment, there isn't anybody that comes and responds to it. Nor can you necessarily even hear the sound as you're sort of like waiting there. There's this noise almost that sounds like it sounds almost like laser fire. So like if you imagine this sort of like pew pew, which you would have heard several times as you were kind of crossing this over, and it's just somewhere in the space around you there's just like bits of like deep ice just sort of like cracking, and the sound sort of like spreading out within that. But otherwise, it just feels like thud, thud, thud. And then just like no sound, no thing.
I feel like Grin would try to push their body inwards, and I'm only doing this because I have stealthy. Just push my body through whatever opening I have there to see what's on the other side. And looking mournfully back at my friends, or my companions, rather.
Business partners.
Colleagues.
Maybe about like 20 feet or so beyond the space itself, there's like a corridor that then opens up into a wider room. The room itself is a lot less grand almost than you'd expect, considering just the actual frontis of the, like, you don't necessarily want to say like, it feels like the way in which you sort of approached it and the way in which it was spoken about by the priestess, it feels like it should be a temple of sorts. But from coming here, it just seems like a place. Like it seems almost like it kind of like feels more like a sort of like a workshop or something. And the corridor that you're sort of like heading towards like dives down quite a bit steeper than you'd probably want it to be. Although there are some solid stairs that have like been cut into the actual ice itself. There is a little bit part of it which is sort of like covered with was like a metal like lintel steps. So there's certain parts where it's not just standing straight on top of this sort of like ice that you're climbing down. Do you wish to break away from everybody else and go down those stairs?
Sure. I have
So
7
cer-
HP.
so
I
certain.
can take risk today.
That's genuinely quite a lot for an early character.
Yeah, no, it's huge.
How long does everybody else wait before following Grin?
I was gonna wait a while, but Zazie just like takes off into the hallway, like after like 20 seconds.
So after like descending what feels like about like 2 or 3 stories worth of steps, then Grin gets down to the base of this like level where it's a relatively broad room. It's not necessarily very deep. It's maybe about like 15 feet deep, probably about like 30 feet wide. Pretty much the entirety of the floor on the left-hand side is just covered with what at first glance looks like a puddle, until then you realize that actually the entirety of the puddle itself is just frozen solid. To the like at the far end of the room, so again it's like quite short and wide. At the far end of the room there is a like quite a sturdy wooden door, and actually the like pattern of the puddle on the floor just like run straight up to this point of the door as well. There are quite close to where the door itself is 2 humans that just like stood there, like completely frozen into the ice, completely naked. It's hard to tell how long they've been there. Like they don't appear to be like wounded in any way, but obviously just the entirety of their bodies are just like blue and whitish with like a few of the segments around the joints that kind of like seem relatively darker in that. And also on the very, very like the right hand wall as you sort of like come into this, there's some like solid gouges that have just been like drawn in, and somebody has like tallied up like 13 separate things. They don't look like they're all drawn at the same time. And yeah, to the south you have a frozen wooden door, and the first noise almost that kind of like might even make you start are just like the tiny little like yips of Zazie as he like skitters down the stairs and like barrels into the back of your legs as he runs up here at this point. Yeah, what's Grin do?
I think Grin would try to go up to the bodies to see if there's anything to salvage for some like heat usage, like if there's any fat left or anything from them.
So the thing that you first note, like as you're heading across to it, obviously the floor beneath you is now just like pure slick ice. In order to like make your way across it, like if you take a very long time, you'll be able to get across there perfectly safely. If you want to move across, like not at like a normal walk, but like those of you who've walked on ice at the normal speed at which you'd walk on ice, that'll take a roll, and the quicker you go, the harder the roll gets, basically.
Oh no, I'll be a little impulsive, especially since I have a bit of a reduction to 2 for agility test. So
nice.
Yeah.
Didn't we establish that we have a sled?
We do.
Like I'm just gonna hurt myself. A sled sounds nice.
So yeah, so the if you take a normal speed wander across, then you want to make a difficulty 10. So if you're reducing that, that'll go down to an 8 for yourself.
Oh, I succeeded.
Okay. So yeah, the oddness about the floor here at this point, despite the fact that it is clearly was basically just a puddle that has frozen because it's so cold here. It's not as perfectly flat as you expect. There's like during the point in which it flowed, there was probably some like motion in the actual water that sort of caused it to like either it's buckled or something similar. And it is, again, it's through your skill that you're sort of like adjusting that as you go close. Neither of the people that are just like stuck up there frozen to the wall. First of all, there's in parts, maybe almost like an inch worth of just like ice fully encasing them at this point here. If you're basically looking to try and gather some fats, there's chunks around like the stomach, both like the front of the hips and so on here. Both the people here weren't very fat, but there's at least like got quite a certain amount of like on the shoulders, and there's definitely like sort of like slightly, well, it would be a much more wobbly chest if it weren't frozen to the wall. But nonetheless, like you could spend a chunk of time like smashing out of the ice and just like sawing off bits of flesh if you functionally want some fat.
While you're doing this down the corridor, I'm going to start pulling chunks of lard from my bag and distributing them amongst everybody else.
Awesome.
Smear on ourselves for warmth. I just won't let you know that I've got that with me. You're doing your thing. You seem happy.
I eat it.
It does say it functions as 5 meals in a pinch. So
Yeah.
No, that's what I was thinking.
It is, yeah. It's one of my favorite things on any given equipment list ever, is a bit of lard for general greasing, or food if you need. So yeah, so it takes maybe about like 15 or so minutes at this point here to be able to, like, what weapons does Grin have? What sort of
Grin just
what
has a
tools
staff.
might they
so
be able
it's
to use to
a
harvest
staff
the
and a
flesh of a
lantern.
frozen person?
A staff and a lantern are going to be the two things. I could technically like hammer. I could try to figure out the weak point of it, but like I feel as though in this game that character like no, just be impulse. So I would definitely say he would start with a small hammer and like try to chisel it, and then he'd get frustrated and use the hammer and then the staff to whack it.
Yeah, there's definitely like almost like entire shards of ice that just kind of like come off of the bodies and just like smash down to the floor. It's hard to cut with a staff, but you could probably almost like if you twist at the edge of the lantern or something. Oh, if you've actually got a saw, yeah, and there you go. Just like
And a drill.
Spend some time.
Just saying.
got a whole toolkit.
I brought my coring sample kits specifically for extracting fat from human beings.
Yeah, so I would say if you want to roll 1d6, Vic, then that's how much fat you're able to salvage.
We're eating
from the
good
body.
tonight. I got a 5.
Nice. Functionally, each chunk will behave in the exact same way as a piece of lard, although it is currently frozen. What's happening up the top apart from the lardening?
Yeah, I'm absolutely smearing myself with lard for a bit of warmth.
Carver's just. So you're smearing yourself, and Carver's just been handed this chunk, and is just like, all right, it does the same thing. And then
I want to be slippery and warm. They're two of my main criteria for this journey.
I don't know if it works like that, but okay.
What does your book say?
It doesn't say
Right,
put
well, shut
lard
the fuck
on
up, then.
body.
I'm like coating each of my teeth individually, like as I go, and then but eating most of it.
Excellent news. I'm assuming after probably about maybe like even as many as 30 minutes, the three of you who were at the top do then like bring the sled down the stairway into the room where you can just see like Grin just having a go on these corpses, like
absolutely
picking them all up. And again, yeah, just to recap, like the room's about like 15 feet deep, about 30 feet wide. The whole of the left-hand side of it. Actually, is this left to your eyes? I'm assuming that
Yes.
you're behaving like real people.
Yes.
So the whole left side of the room is like covered over in this what first looks like a puddle, but is then clear it's just entirely frozen, like very, very blue water. On the other side, we've kind of got the fairly standard like floor, which is hard to tell if it's like rock or ice here, and functionally, I mean, it's the same way, really, in a way that like geologists will say ice is a rock.
Which means
yeah,
water. Which means water lava.
Yeah. And
no.
carved into the wall over on the right hand side, you've just got these like 13 gouges that have sort of just been like tallied up. And at the far end of the room is a thick wooden door that you can see just like significant chunks of like water sort of like frozen into it and frozen up with it. Initially, it would probably look like and again, as somebody who is like the tin can master, so someone who thinks I know when I see indefensible, like when I see perfectly defensible positions, Kvetin would initially see, oh, this is going to be a nightmare to get through, until he then realizes that actually the hinges on it have just shattered, like the hinges themselves have been like waterlogged and just like frozen through, and like with at least a little bit of like pushing and effort, you'd be able to like push the whole wall down.
I'm gonna, assuming this is some sort of marker for the number of days that we've spent here, I'm gonna start a new one underneath that 13. So I'm gonna draw a sideways line with my hooked hand, and then drag down and create a 1 underneath for us.
I forgot I also had a hooked hand. I completely forgot
I
about this.
clink my hook hand against your hook hand to remind you, like, hook friends.
Speaking of things I forgot I had, I have a blasphemous Necrubal Bible. Should I read from that for good luck, maybe?
Yes.
I definitely think you should. Likely to be one of the major things that brings the heresy here.
There's just, this seems totally normal. It's so intensely blasphemous that even priests can only read it once a day. Seems fine.
Perfectly safe.
So I'm gonna read this. If it's even, it's great for us. It wasn't even.
What's the entirety of the wording on the Bible?
When read, roll a die. On an even result, for the rest of the day, PCs may heal D4 HP after just 5 minutes of rest. On an odd result, the priest is plagued by demonic hallucinations. The DM may invent D3 things that only the priest can see and describe them to the player as if true. This effect ends with sunrise.
Perfect.
Love to do a blasphemy.
At least, like, the first thing that you like feel from this as you're sort of like reading it through is it is almost like quite calming in a way, in that it does genuinely seem to be like, and it might just be selective reading as you're kind of like rushing through and pointing out the points that directly underline what you've been saying is correct.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, obviously.
But it is you are at least fairly confident that the second body on the wall has like something inside it, to the point where like you can see the ribs now where it's something in there, and almost like something is like trying to push its way through and burst out. And I mean, the sacred space of what your character thinks exists between your ears. I can't really tell you what you think, but I can at least suggest that you're like, you probably don't want to be in this room for very long. It's not clear exactly what's going to come out of that body, but
the first thing that came to my mind was we need to open that up. So I think that Carver's just like, I think there's based on what I'm seeing in my notes here, I think we gotta open that up, maybe? And then I just point at a body that's hanging from a wall.
And yeah, at this point you can see like the intercostal bits on the ribs just there. There's quite weirdly on the actual like sternum itself, you can see it appears to have been tattooed. And it's everybody that can see this.
Great.
It's like it's moving or something. We should get that down and see what's inside of it.
Is this one of the ones that's frozen into the wall?
Yeah. So it's like the body is mostly still there. The front part is kind of it's not thawed, but like all of the ice that's been sort of clad on top of it has definitely fallen off and at least semi-shattered.
It's definitely not moving.
No. None of the rest of you can see moving.
I take my hooked hand and I bury it in the chest of this thing.
Nice. Give me roll this as an attack. I mean, it's not going to fail, but and so the attacks work. You're rolling d20, adding your strength, and typically again aiming for 12.
Oh, so that's 13.
Nice. So yeah, functionally you're able to like tear through this thing here and hook around something that feels like it's entirely solid. And then as you like pull this thing back out, there's just this like solid, like almost like black ice, like the darkest ice you've possibly seen at this point here. And it's just the heart who's just entirely been like structured in this. That said, Carver doesn't see it as a heart. It almost looks like it's this just like gently glowing egg, but instead of having like very solid walls, this like ever so slightly like pulsating, almost like jellied style walls on this heart. The rest of you just see this solid hunk of frozen heart.
Vedin is not entirely sure what we're here to get. Like he understands it's an artifact, that it's going to be whatever good is, it's that. So I just it's on the end of my hook, and I just turn around and face everybody else, and I go, "Is this it?"
I like rush up and like with my hand, I like drop my walking stick and I come up and I like rip it off of your hook, and I'm like,
Ah, it's the egg.
Oh, so we're done?
No,
Everybody go home. It's fine.
we're not even close to done, but this is good. This is great.
It would be such a troll move if Chris was to like have actually put the artifact in the first room.
Why didn't I think of that?
You get to a note. You get to the end, and there's just a note.
The real friendship was in you all along. By that, maybe you passed it some time ago. So Carver's holding this like weirdly pulsing egg thing. Everybody else just sees he's just got this like chunk of heart in his hand.
Cool.
I'm specifically like not describing it as glowing or anything. I'm just saying, oh, it's the egg.
Do you want me to get the other one?
Other one?
Yeah, I turn around and I'm going to try to rip the heart out of the other guy.
You guys are having a day. They lose
I'm
all
having
their
fun.
fat. They lose all their
Chris
organs.
is like, why did I write an adventure if these guys are just going to rip hearts out of bodies?
Nope, I'm enjoying this.
Chris, I saw you. I saw you make
what I
a
wanted.
face.
That's
I saw
a
you
dirt.
make a face when I
That's
was
a
like,
dirty
open it
20
up.
if I need to roll.
Excellent, perfect. Yeah, so this again like works with almost like if this were animated. They use the exact same animation for this in order to like
just flipped around like.
Yeah. And despite the fact that it's quite clear that only one of your hands is hooked, and like, what's it right hand last time? But yeah, and again, you just get this like solid chunk of it out. This one is a smaller heart, and it's kind of like you can see just like marbling of like bright white fat all of the way around one side of this thing.
Cool.
But
I give that a little lick first.
Yeah.
That a little lick.
It's got a very, very deep taste, like almost like the way that like a very peaty whiskey has a like very strong taste. And it's that same thing, and it's hard to tell if it's more like if the more tasty part of it is the fatty bit of it, or just like the muscle part. it's quite pleasant.
I explore that idea for a minute and just try to figure out if I can figure out what side is the PD side. Then I decide it's really about the blend. It's the seam where they meet before handing it over to Kava.
Does it just look like a heart to me?
Yeah, this one looks just like a heart. Although it is almost like the same sort of like strange, almost like bluish greenish color that the shifting egg is.
I think you go to hand it to Carva, and Carva just goes,
What would I want with that?
Well, you liked that one, so I figured.
Well, this is the egg.
I look over at Torn and I'm like, and I try to hand you the. Do you want an egg?
No.
I go to my notes. There's like a drawing of an egg.
I mean, I guess I'll hold on to it. I'll lick it a few more times, then stick it in my little pouch. I'll let like we see the total, like after whatever we go to the next scene, we see like the dog ice cream moment where I let Zazie have some, and then like I have a little bit more, and we just kind of like trade off back and forth for a little bit.
Wholesome.
Also, yeah, wholesome Mork Borg moment.
Dogs will eat literally anything.
Anything.
Apart from margarine.
Apart from margarine.
His heart is made of margarine.
Good thing we rubbed ourselves in margarine.
That was their name, margarine.
It could have been. Yeah. So, I think at this point we should call for a brief 5-minute break.
Let's do it. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We are currently playing In the Blue Light, but we'll be back in just a few minutes to keep on playing after we've had a chance to take a break. You should take this opportunity to take a break. Also, if you haven't yet, head over to ttrpg.link/bluelightgame. I'll drop that link in the chat. It's also in the description to check out this amazing Mork Borg adventure by Chris Bissette, who's playing with us today. You can also head over to ttrpg.link/138 to check out 13 Hunters. But we'll be back in just one moment.
I'm sorry.
I'm not.
Prompted the reveal.
We are live. Some of us are sorry, some of us are not here on Plus One EXP.
Not actually sorry.
We are playing. None of us are sorry. I'll tell you what none of us are sorry about. None of us are sorry to be playing In the Blue
Never
Light by Chris
apologize. It
Bissette.
shows weakness.
You know something I've realized about my critical machine after a couple of rolls? This is not a complaint. I think they're great. All of them are handmade. This is going to happen from time to time. Happens sometimes. I'm glad it happened to me. My D100 and my D20 buttons are absolutely switched on this critical machine, and so that's just a thing I noticed. I was like, I wonder why. I was curious why the D100 was over a slot further than it seemed like it should have been, and now I know.
Now you know.
So anytime you ask me to roll a D20, I've got a way better chance of succeeding at this point in time. And so,
Unfortunately, your chances on a D100 are way worse.
Well, I mean, but if I'm playing, here's the thing: next Mothership game, I'm gonna kill. I'm gonna kill on the next Mothership game. It's gonna be great. With that said, we are playing In the Blue Light. Sean of Smith, our guest GM, Chris, Vic, Nevin, and myself down in the depths of the frozen waste. Pulling hearts out of frozen bodies and getting ready to eat their fat later. And I'm gonna hand things back over to Sean.
Excellent stuff. So ahead of you is a door that has been clearly very solidly frozen, to the point where even the hinges themselves have actually like physically burst. It is still lying within the middle of the like slew of what once would have been like a puddle spreading out or something, and it's clearly like frozen over again now. It does have a handle. I mean, you can't really turn the handle at some point in this bit, but
yeah, you told me it looks like the hinges are busted, and so
Yeah.
a good half. Do I think we could push it inward, or do I think we need to pull it this way?
you reckon you'd probably be able to put it either way, to be fair.
Okay.
It would be the awkwardness is where like to stand directly in front of it, you'd be stood on the really slippery ground, so you'd need to like set up like a chain of people so you don't like just pull yourself closer to the door. It might be simpler to try and like shove it forwards.
That's what I was thinking. And so I'm actually just going to go over there and just give it a big shove and see how resistant it is to just my own personal attempt to push it over.
Yeah. I'm going to say that will give me a roll.
Let me hit my D20.
Is there like aiding in Mork Borg?
Not really. Although the way in which I would do it normally is that if you are aiding, it tends to reduce the difficulty that you're aiming for.
Okay.
So that's
also, I've never seen Mork Borg players want to help each other. So
that's going to be a 16 all day.
Hey, nice. So yeah, so as you're pushing it forwards, you're like your feet are kind of like scuffling on the ground beneath you, but you're able to get a certain amount of like the motion forwards where you can just like shove this entire thing and it just like falls flat directly away from you, like lands super loudly on the ground the other side. You sort of like opened up into a corridor that's immediately like heading left and right, and just like the sound of this just like smashing on the ground there just like echoes throughout this entire place. And as the echo returns, it almost sounds like someone is laughing at you. There's this kind of like sort of like laughing sound.
Yeah, right. I opened that door good.
The frozen puddle is sort of like sept out further into the corridor in which you're at. You can see to your left, it continues on for a bit before then turning to the right and sort of like heading further deeper in. Or to your right, you can see it kind of continues a fair way before eventually either like reaching like a really like darker spot or sort of like opening up into a larger room or something. What is it you're doing in terms of light? I'm not going to be like, you can't see, you've got no light. But if I'm feeling grim, it's nice to know it's there.
I assume we'd probably have come with torches or something, right?
Yeah. I know that Grin has a lantern.
Like mount a torch on the sled and just have the dog pull it around so that we can keep our hands free.
The dog can't pull it. The dog is tiny.
You can pull the sled without anybody on it on icy floors, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not. I'm going to
Can
go
it
ahead and
tow
say
it?
still not. Yes, like I think this is a situation in which it'd be like, yeah, the dog
You're
can
going,
pull
like-
it here, but like again, we zoom in, the dog looks like it's going fast. We actually see like forward motion happening. We zoom out, and it's like
Just a still space.
I'm going to mount a torch on the sled anyway because I like that.
Yeah.
It's a good.
And so
it's
you've
a
got
good
quite a
visual.
bit of light, and also the way in which because innately the fire itself is warm, surrounded by a load of cool air. So every now and then, just all of this like cold air is like rushing towards this fire, and sort of like just like spurting out and sputtering out as it kind of does this. Like it feels like a candle in a dark room on a dark night, but you're seeing enough that you can sort of see, and there's just all of these shapes that say like it seems like echoes of yourselves, but it's just shadows moving in different directions. So you've got a corridor that runs off to your left and then turns and heads down to the right. There's one that sort of like moves straight forwards and onwards. From that one, you can sort of, it almost sounds like you can hear humming, but it's very, very quiet. What do you want to do?
Humming like a person humming?
Yeah. But it's it doesn't sound like a tune. It's more that there's just like an intermittent noise. Like initially you just thought it was just the sounds of the ice, but it actually sounds more like it's just a person kind of going like, maybe if anything, it's just a sound that somebody's making to not be in the silence.
Do you not say anything about other people being here?
Do they? I asked
You were
the
warned?
GM.
I don't remember who amongst you were warned, although I do think it probably was.
We all heard about something. I don't remember exactly what.
Yeah,
I heard about a
an
mirror.
ancient man.
Yeah, Vic
Yes,
had that.
there's a mirror. There's an ancient man you should fear and avoid who lives in a ruined room. There are refugees who have taken up residence in the vault that won't welcome visitors. And removing the artifact requires a price paid in blood.
Okay.
So yeah.
Hello?
You expect And after a brief moment, you see that the darkness that was at the end was just like a curtain or something similar, and that's kind of like pulled past, and you can see that actually beyond there's like quite a pleasant, like a dull, warmish sort of like light that's coming up, and then silhouetted in that you can see quite a tall man, very, very thin. Looks like he's got like quite a large head, and that's pretty much like all you can see, just like silhouetted out against the bright light behind him, sort of like looking there. And then he just shouts out, it's like, "Go away!"
We didn't get what we need yet, right?
No.
We can't yet.
That's not my problem.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, you asked us to go away, so if you want us to leave, it actually, I mean, directly is your problem, one way or the other.
Your logic is impeccable.
Would you like it to be your problem?
No, but there's two ways from here. Turn around, you got that other long corridor, or you head back out on the ice and you go home.
Or we could come in there with you.
No, it's Felban's place. You want to go off?
Anybody know who Felban is?
I have no idea.
Is there anything in your notes?
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you that about everything.
I know, it's so good. I'm gonna start rolling randomly. Evens yes, odds no. Whether or not my notes are accurate or true doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Go on,
So
lick him.
is it? Are you just like hanging out in here?
Well, at the moment, yeah. Just I'm working on stuff.
What are you
Yeah,
I ain't
working
got
on?
time for guests.
I get it. I get it. I know what it's like. Do you have any mirrors in there?
Yeah, so how else do you reckon you can see things up close?
What?
Mirrors. Line them
Right.
up, see things close.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I look back at everybody else.
Lick him.
How do you feel about dogs?
Well, never had a problem with them. Used to give me indigestion, but got past that.
Yeah, I get that. No allergies though.
Look, I've got to get back to this here. It's delicate work. I
I'm just going to
suggest
go in. I'm
going
just going to
the
go
other
in.
way.
I walk in. What are you working on? So what you got?
And as you like head into the room, you can see that there's it's similar sort of size to the previous one that you were in. It's not quite as like thin and wide. It's sort of a little bit like shorter and squatter. There's a like tiny little wooden desk. It's almost like a standing desk, kind of like kitchen counter height. And there's like quite a few chairs around it, but if you were to sit on the chair, you'd sort of like just see it like at eye level rather than anything else. Now that you're a lot closer, you can see that this guy has like really pale skin. His eyes again like super bright blue, again almost like that frozen color sort of thing, that's super bright. He is entirely naked, but he does also have an enormously long beard that just covers down all of the way across any things that would get this banned if it were on the telly. Right side of the room, not right side, like the far side of the room, you can see there is a door, which again has kind of got like some of that like frozen puddle just like underneath it. And the wall to your left as you head in is ever so slightly glowing. Like there's a sort of like faint blue light that's just like almost like filtering its way through. Although there's kind of like small specks that sort of like are stopping that as it is and as it's sort of going. And at this point again, as Torn just kind of like blusters past and is able to like look at this tall guy and says, well, so I'm working on a little tiny bit of that. I'm trying to get this saltpeter to properly balance it out right. And you can see the table itself is just covered in all this like glassware. It's stacked up in such a way. There's almost like small sort of like additional, the sort of thing you put above a Bunsen burner, but there's no open fire or anything here, despite the fact that the room itself is really warm. And there's just all of these just like tiny little things on the table. He's clearly working with like miniature crucibles. And it looks a little bit like a flower, almost like a tulip, just made of clearly like mirrored glass. Just lined up, and every now and then you can just see that as he wanders over to it, like picks up, like stares down this like kaleidoscope style, looking at what's on the table. Now that you're here, he seems like entirely just focused in on that again. And although he sort of like moves around so he doesn't have to stand too close to you, he's not talking to you at any point. There is quite a big staff in the corner of the room. By staff, I mean a stick, not like a group of people supporting him. and it's like
He's got payroll. What are the benefits?
He did a capitalism. Watch out.
and yeah,
How are
so this,
you? Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, go for it.
How are you not freezing to death? You start bollock naked.
Yeah,
It's fucking freezing.
well, yeah, but if you're worried you're going to get cold, like if you're putting these barriers in the way, then that fear it enables it. You ever heard that thing? It's like don't think of a black cat, and then it's in your
No.
head.
Well, of course it is.
Yeah, they're psychic,
So are you saying don't think of freezing to death and you won't freeze to death?
pretty much.
That's nonsense.
Yeah, they said that. But again, like you can see he's got like his skin appears cold, but he's not moving like somebody who is themselves cold, or even at the point of like hypothermia where he won't visibly move as if he appears to be cold, but instead is like utterly frozen.
Am I hallucinating you?
Yeah, it's probably that.
I don't think that doesn't sound like something an hallucination would say.
Can we hear this? Can we hear this conversation, or is it like kind of hushed?
Yeah, I mean it's not super loud, and there's definitely something about
Tone
like,
doesn't
the
have an inside
temperature in the
voice.
room.
Oh, okay, good.
But also it's from the point outside, there's just like this curtain's just kind of like fallen back in front of the doorway ahead of you. And even as much as the curtain falls away, there was a slight warm glow that you were feeling forwards, and it just stood there in this cold corridor with Zozzy kind of like being like just barking at the back, struggling to kind of like catch up with the torch.
Oh, the thing about the cold is in my notes.
What? I go back out of the room. Show me.
Yeah, right here.
And I go to a page and it says like, "Don't think about being cold, and you won't be cold."
That's mad.
He's clearly doing it. Or not doing it.
I'm so confused.
Is he cold now?
You know, I've heard confusion is the first step on the road to not thinking about things.
And being cold.
So you just so you're working on this. I mean, I guess that's fine. I mean, we got the egg. How are you going to cook the egg?
You don't cook the egg.
What do you do with the egg?
We need the egg for later.
We cook it later.
You don't cook the egg.
So we're going to eat raw egg?
We're not going to eat it. It's not that kind of an egg.
As I say this, I'm like, that seems unsanitary as I take another long lick on the heart that we pulled out of the other guy. Okay, well, so I think we're gonna keep on going. Do you need anything?
Does
I mean,
anything we need?
if you're offering, I could use some of the bones.
Just any bones?
You know the ones.
What bones?
Yeah. But just remind everybody else.
Tell you what, if you think you found him, I'll pay you for him.
I think I found him.
We'll see.
Well, no, was not the deal you just made. The deal you made was if I thought I found him.
Yeah.
And right now, because you said that, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so I thought I found them. So now you owe me money.
It's
Yeah,
just
if you
like the gold.
Take him out of your part, like bring him out wherever your bag is, wherever you got there. That'll be fine.
That wasn't the deal, though.
We didn't make a deal. Didn't shake your hand. Nothing.
No, verbal contracts are binding in Kyrgyz. I read that.
Oh yeah.
That's in the notes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And we're all witnesses to that.
All
So
of us, even the dog.
especially
Especially the dog.
Dog is actually a what's the word? He's a notary.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Notary of the public.
Fuck you.
Painful pardon. Amazing. It's like, well, very well. And he gives you a small, like, it appears to be like it's the size of a coin. It feels like a coin when you're holding it, but it is just like a circle of glass. Almost like you kind of got like round framed glasses, which have kind of like had the middles popped out of them. It's just like one of them. And it's like, there's your payment. Leave me alone. And if you bring more of the bones back, I'll give you more money.
Deal.
More is in any.
Look, he followed through on his side of the bargain. We're good. I thought about it. He gave me something. He didn't. There are no other terms. That sounds great.
We have got a dog, and dogs are notoriously very good at finding bones.
There.
That's what notary means.
Yes.
I'm gonna unharness Zazie. All right, Zazie, go find the bones.
Can you give me a presence check on his behalf? So the other thing about in Mork Borg is if at any situation like a non-player character has to roll, you never add anything. It's just a flat roll.
Yeah, 14.
14, nice. He does turn around and like ever so slightly is sort of like slippery on the ground. Sort of like comes loose a bit from the harness and then starts like, I was going to say paddling off, but there is no water. There's just the ice, but it looks a bit like a paddle. As he sort of like moves back off in the other direction past the torch.
All right. Y'all ready?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Okay.
And as you leave the other room, the bearded guy is like, "Make sure you come back alive."
Do you like us now? Are we friends? Like, are we buddies?
Yeah, let's use that word, buddies. Or at least if you do die in a place where it's really obvious and what you've died of, so you can serve as like environmental storytelling for the next time I go looking.
For bones?
Yeah.
Do you want us to make sure we're like holding a little sign? With like,
yeah.
No.
Yeah. So whatever it is that kills you, as you're dying, write it up, and then
like skeleton, therefore run away, and then just expire.
Yeah. Very same.
Right. Good.
But if it's a skeleton, that'll be good because we're after the bones.
True.
Yeah.
That sound logic, it tracks.
You're a very smart hallucination.
Speaking of hallucinations, is there anything that Carva sees that nobody else does?
You can see
on the south, like this, so the south wall in this, which is the one to the left. Invariably, I'm just going to keep flitting between cardinal directions and objective ones. There is a hole in the wall because you can see that there's the glow there, and clearly the reason why it's glowing blue is just because there's this just like hole that you can kind of like see through. If you want to like look,
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I do. I've decided that Carva is ridiculously impulsive.
The far side of this, you can almost, and it takes what, maybe it's something about the heat of the room in which you're in, and just like the chill of the wall itself. And eventually, as your like vision clears from this point, you can see the far end of that. There's a like large stone table, and another like very, very like a significant amount of hair, both in like beard region and in like head region, and also maybe like a hood, although that also might additionally be hair, just kind of like sat at this table, just like staring at this. It looks like a snake has just been like wrapped into a tiny little circle, but this whole thing is just like giving off this like significant blue light, and you can just see this thing there, and like whoever sat at the table just like looks completely lost in their thoughts as they're just like staring at this thing.
Write some stuff down. Goes back to look for bones.
And yeah, the rest of you like head down the corridor, and a few times kind of having to like slowly like shift the pace at which you're walking so that you don't entirely like have your legs go out from underneath you and twist around the corner, and just like again head down this. It's quite thin, but it's not like impossibly thin. It's the sort of thickness you might get of like a space that's sort of been like carved out underground, that's sort of been like hammered up enough space that you could move things through it. The walls themselves are still just carved solidly out of the ice. Although there are quite a few different flourishes, like at the very, very top of it, you can sort of see this like coving that's just up there. There even appears to be like a skirting board down at the bottom of the floor. And as you're heading forwards, you can hear both your footsteps on the actual floor itself sort of echoing a certain amount. Although the further you get, the less immediate the echo sound is. There's almost like a delay of like a second where you kind of like put your foot down and pause, and then you hear the sort of like the sound bouncing back up before you then do turn to the left. And are almost immediately struck by this like aroma of the sea, of just like the ocean, and head forward into a perfectly square room at this point. Tiny puddle of water up to the absolute left corner, again completely frozen over. Within that segment, you can just see that there's this huge statue of almost like it looks like a fertility model. I don't know if you remember I can remember the name of one of the like prehistoric, like one of the earliest statue forms we've got. One of those like the something Venus. I can't remember which one it is. This like fertility shape statue. For a head, there's just a bear's head. And out of the back, you've just got these like enormous wings, but there's like 3 or 4 sets of them that almost look like dragonfly wings or something similar. Huge statue of that up in the corner, around the base of that. Again, puddle frozen over. Near it, there is a wooden chest which is sort of like been frozen over in the ice, and again, you can see at least half of the bottom section of it has just been entirely like waterlogged and sort of like puffed up and still just like solidly frozen down into this. To the southeast, so pretty much directly ahead of you as you're sort of going into that, there is like quite a dull flickering light that seems to be going like directly through the wall. And down to the south also is a door that you can see. This one, again, quite a solid, big, thick wooden door, although hasn't quite been like puffed up in the same way that all the rest of them have when they got waterlogged. And again, the smell in this room it's like the ocean, but it's like the ocean at night rather than at any other time you'd be there. What do you do?
I want to go check out that statue. It looks like the Venus of Willendorf.
That's the one. Excellent. What about everyone else?
I'm going to try to use my nose to try to find where the strongest point for the ocean smell is. If I can still use my nose. Smell gets weird when you're that cold.
I'm going to wait and see what happens.
Excellent. What about Carver?
Just feverishly looking through my notes, which, as we have established, are meaningless.
Excellent. So yeah, so one of the things that was the first thing, like Grin notices that although the smell itself seems to be like quite consistent, because this is like really precise, salty sort of smell, by fairly systematically moving around the room, or at least moving to a place, taking a big sniff, moving to another place, taking a big sniff, a couple of times almost like dislodging just like chunks of phlegm that like feel like they're just like cutting the inside of your nose. But the closest place definitely seems to be the chest. And actually getting close to it, you can then realize that it's not just that the bottom part of it's done like this, and actually maybe it's because of the light that's sort of in the corner of the room. You can't quite you couldn't quite see until you're very close. The entire thing has just been like entirely frozen over. Like easily there's like a foot thick ice on top of and beside these things. What's particularly weird is, although the smell is stronger as you get closer to the chest itself, like even if you were to like almost like put your nose directly up against it, like ice this thick should definitely stop whatever it is that it's smelling, and it's not the ice itself that smells, and it's quite unsettling almost in a way. The statue itself is like has been carved seemingly from various different sections of stone. So it looks like there's probably like about 8 sections of stone that have sort of been like put together and sort of like carved in different places. It does look slightly like damaged on the surface. The whole thing has kind of got like a load of different like pock marks of it, almost like if you haven't properly let like a batter or something settle, and then just like little bubbles sort of like eventually just like pop up and just burst out on the surface. It sort of looks a little bit like that. You don't recognize it at all. And in fact, none of the priests recognize it either. It's not this isn't expressly a religious symbol that you recognize at all.
I lick it.
Can you give me another toughness check?
That's exactly what I want to hear when I say I lick it.
Yeah? You good?
It's a 1.
Yes.
Death by tongue.
So I'm going to steal a trick here from Jason Cordova. I can never remember how to pronounce his name.
Cordova. Yeah.
And I'm going to describe the worst possible outcome. Of course, you do have omens, and you can shift these.
Oh, I could. I don't know that. I don't know that.
And the shift can be retrospective in that we can almost like see this as a sort of like
Sure.
as a flashback, where like you go to lick this, and as you're doing so, like your tongue just like catches right at the very, very bottom of it. They're like the really red raw tip that you kind of pulled out from that, and just more and more of it sticks to the same thing, in that this isn't actually made out of like stone in the same way. This is made of bone, in a way that's like sticky to your tongue. But then also like the significant, horrible, just like chill of this sticks the whole thing there. But you're in the motion and you're sort of coming up, and then it gets to the point where there's the ice immediately underneath you, and you lose your footing and you slip and you pull back, and it just tears your tongue, like not off, but it tears the entire like top half off. So if you imagine like, yeah, probably about like that far back, everything above that isn't there anymore.
Cool.
This will deal D2 damage to you.
Does my armor protect me against this damage?
Is your armor a gum shield?
Did you put armor in your mouth? I imagine you didn't.
He's got that.
I didn't know if the intellectual concept of armor. I was thinking about armor when this happened, and so I didn't know.
Armor protects you. Your tongue doesn't come out, just your Invisalign.
I was gonna say like retainer.
Look,
The braces take the brunt.
I'll spend. I will spend my omen. But what I would like to spend my omen to do is to I would like all the damage to happen, but no killing. Is that fair?
Ooh.
Can I make that plea? Like my character no longer has the front half of their tongue. I want the consequences of this to be a reality.
Yeah,
I just don't want to.
It hasn't dealt that 1 point of damage.
But it didn't deal that 1 point of damage.
Yes.
Somehow.
Somehow.
And it's probably in the damage. You know how like excessive heat can immediately cauterize a wound?
Yeah.
There's definitely some sort of like very minor acid that's sort of like coming off from the connection of like your tongue to this surface.
Cool. I turn around and I go, that tastes horrible.
You gotta
It's just like blood streaming down and freezing on my chest.
you got something.
Yeah?
Yeah, just like right here.
And like I'm trying to take care of it, but I'm just making it worse and worse and worse.
Just sort of like spreading it.
Yeah.
Because of course you've also remember that you've like buttered up your face. And so it's just sort of like mixing in with this grease and just
freezing
like,
at the same time.
Yeah, just like smearing further over.
You got it. Yeah, you got it. You're good.
Good.
Are you
Tommy!
gonna...
Where are you, boy?
You're gonna keep licking things, aren't you?
Huh?
Oh my god, he hears through his tongue. He's gone deaf.
Why wouldn't I lick things?
Oh my god.
So yeah, what do you do? You're in this like salty smelling room. Kvetin is going to have a nightmare pronouncing his name now.
Now it's easier.
This might become tiresome. We'll send him in rooms first. He can do the talking.
I'd like to get closer to the smell.
So the only way you can get even closer to the smell would be to somehow find a way of getting the getting the ice off. Like you're certain that the source of the smell is in that chest.
I would probably take let's look at what I have on my body. I'd probably take let's see what metal things I have. I have a hammer and a small saw. I'd probably since I have a lantern and some oil, I'd probably try to heat up the small saw as well to kind of create a electric saw effect, but really just heat to try to start to melt away things. But that would take a really long time, and we're in really cold temperatures, so that probably wouldn't work as well as I'd want it to. But I'm working with what I got. I still got a drill though.
Like one of the things you notice as you like make a start doing it is that there's like it is like long, heavy going. It's the point where even as you're like heating up some of the saw and it's like carving through the ice quite effectively, but of course it's making all these like tiny little like microcrystals, which are then like either like melting and then immediately like refreezing because they're just in contact with just such a huge block of ice. Like you could keep at it, but it will take hours.
I'm gonna throw a fit then. Like a full-on tantrum.
What's that look like? Yeah.
I'd probably kick the box and just try to make as much noise as I probably shouldn't make, because it says that I'm a pyromaniac that's ravenous, and I'll roll with that. I am upset that this is not melting. I look at everyone around me and just want the attention from it, but I start just punching it and sobbing at the box, probably only like 5 minutes into trying to get it to get going.
It's what they always say. It's like, don't bring a pyromaniac to a frozen hell tomb.
Frankly, I'm tired of hearing people say it.
Yeah, it's like spend my whole life having to hear it, and I can
Cliche.
send a fan in the ice every time.
So unfortunately, Carva is cruel and suspicious. I don't know what mean thing to say, but I imagine Carva says something very mean.
Is it so mean that you even feel bad about saying it, or is it not quite that mean?
I don't think Carva knows how to feel bad about being mean. I never feel bad about having to be mean.
I walk over and I pat you on the back as you're sobbing over the chest, and I say, "Yeah, it'll be okay."
I'm not gonna get tired of that. It's so funny.
Oh. There is a door to the south, and through that door, which invariably at some point somebody will open, you can then see, like, it's much shorter as a corridor than you expect initially when you open up and see the edges of like the corridor floors and the walls quite closely together. But it only runs on forwards for about like maybe 13, 14 feet or something. Wow, that's really specific for something abstract. There are no dimensions on this map, Chris. It's a nightmare to use. How do I know? Is this a prime number? But so it runs about 15 feet down.
12 anytime you want a distance.
And opens up into like a much wider, like a very, very long, very, very thin room. And already you can just smell this like intensely like hot, like rotting smell, like it's like a sort of compost heap just in like the heat of summer. Probably it's like been like sat in a barrel, just like got hotter and hotter and hotter, and like all that sort of like fermented shit smell, all of that thing just aromatizing through the room. You can see the floor in here is like initially, especially in the like slightly flickering light of the torch that you've got, especially it just like keeps like not bursting, but there's definitely a significant like boost, and then like an ebb and flow, there we go, of the light as it sort of comes here. You initially think it's probably just another frozen puddle, but actually upon seeing it, it's this like greasy looking slime that's on the floor instead. Almost sort of like halfway between like the sort of like the tacky underside of a scab, that sort of color.
That's so specific and visceral.
Yeah, I don't think I wrote
Excellent.
that. That's all Sean.
That's coming from me.
That's good. I
Thank you
love
very
that.
And yeah, and at the far end of this room, you can see just a set of stairs that, again, they're too steep. They're like comfortable stairs. They're kind of like a pretty much almost like equal angle, but these ones again are just too far over.
Is it possible like tell what the slime is?
Yeah,
without getting so close that it devours me whole?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like it's smeared across the floor. It's almost like if somebody had like dropped some butter and then it kind of like sloshed around a bit. But you're able to look at it from maybe even as many as like 2 or 3 feet away. What's your presence? Like just as a number?
+3.
+3. This is a ghost. Well, it's not a ghost. It's like what's the word for it? It's like ectoplasm. It's that sort of it's and it looks like weird and like phlegmy and stuff on the floor here at this point. Like it's not pleasant, but it's not. It in of itself isn't harmful.
Is ectoplasm flammable?
No, not really.
What if you think about it being flammable really hard?
Yeah, what if I think really, really hard?
If you think really hard about it, you can like it. Basically, it doesn't burn long like a napalm would, but it burns like super quick, like a strip of mercury.
Like magnesium or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever.
Grin, bring that over here.
Whatever the sound is of somebody licking their lips when they don't have a tongue to lick them with, that's the sound that Kevin is making right now. Looking at that
Grin
ectoplasm.
wiggles over.
Did you say Kevin?
I thought so.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin. It's
Kevin.
Kevin
Become
now.
Kevin with the lack
Kevin
of time.
now.
I almost
lack
just
of
said
tongue is
Kevin
just
at the
Kev.
beginning because I was like, Kevin is licking their lips with no tongue.
You have half of a tongue.
Yeah, but
Just
I can't
one, right?
get it. I can't get up there to lick them.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
What
It's a
phantom
dexterity thing.
Gesture.
So it's just a lot of mouth noise.
I think Carva says something else that's mean, probably like "Stop whining, you baby."
Tears don't
bring the
stop. Just the fire begins.
bring the chest over here, and then we just cover it in the ectoplasm.
Before doing that, he like takes essentially the strap that is his hair, pulls it, wipes his face off entirely, and then tries to haul the chest over there.
It would be very difficult considering it's frozen in a block of ice. In that I genuinely
just noticed on my character sheet that I have a small wagon, which I assume we left outside. Can I go pull bits of it off and bring the wood in to set fire to help melt the ice around this chest?
I think yes, to the point where that happens by way of montage. So over the next in total, it's about 3 hours worth where you've pulled this thing apart. I've kind of got some fire going. Whilst the fire's gone on at one point, Carver does see a second egg in the flame. Is he going to do anything about that?
Got the egg.
Yeah, I try to grab it.
Yeah,
I say the egg. Cool. How much damage do I take?
Which hand did you? The question is, which hand did you reach out with? Clink.
Because if it's with your hooked hand,
How new is my hooked hand? That's the question.
I'd say.
How long have I had this hooked hand for?
So I've rolled a dice quite high, which suggests it will be relatively positive for you. So if you want it, basically, whichever of the two is the more useful.
You decide.
Find useful. I'll go in with the hook.
Well, but yeah, so as you
I go in with the hook for sure.
You hook it and you realize as you're kind of dragging it back out that something catches on the end of your hook and just sort of stays there, and it's just it's a knot of wood to everybody else, but it just looks like, again, another sort of ever so slightly sort of writhing egg that's it doesn't seem smaller than the other one, it just seems further away, even though it's on the end of your hand. But you've saved it, you've got it, and luckily haven't significantly burnt yourself. So I'm going to say you will take some damage, but
Good.
Your armor will work if you have any armor.
I have
how convenient.
He didn't reach him with his face, to be fair.
So I have fur armor.
Okay.
Fur is flammable.
True.
I'm just laying down the
so
facts.
hard.
I'm just laying down the facts. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna roll a D2 now. That's a 1.
Hey. So it will functionally and it's quite a slow burn as the burn itself starts to go through at this point here, because you've basically wicked it with all of this fuel that had sort of been handed to you by Torn when you first got into this place, and this frozen butter on your skin and on your furs. But you will take a single point of damage that goes through. But you now do have the second heart. And in the time, the heat of the fire and the ability for Grin to put the both sides of the blade directly into the open like the open flame, and then just like saw through. Again, it's like 3 hours total from the whole like process of actually getting this in.
I love it. We're having snacks.
I go and
Can we put a marshmallow on the end of your hook? Both of you.
Yeah.
By
If by marshmallow
I
you
mean
mean
a chunk of
lump of
lard.
human fat, then yes.
Yeah.
What we call one of my buddy Marsh's mellows we can put on the end of this.
Don't marsh my mellow, man.
I am at one point
Dislike.
during that 3 hours going to retrieve the front half of my tongue. I'm going to go like chip it off the statue, and just pop it back in.
Do you chew it and swallow it? Or
No,
like,
I roll it around and taste it to see what it tastes like. This is and honestly, this is one of my character's long-term life goals. Is I've tasted so many things, but I've never tasted my own tongue.
Here's the problem, though. Aren't you
The
missing all
forbidden
your
fruit.
taste buds? Aren't the
Yep.
taste buds on the part that got ripped off?
little bit.
You can say you can try to convince Fedden that is not that is how tongues work. Doesn't matter.
Perfect.
At the end of the day, both parts of my tongue are in my mouth. It should work fine.
You know, I can't argue with this.
No, that's solid
Nevin, the
logic.
human being who has gone to college, can't argue with this.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we knew. I wasn't leaving it behind. It'll come up later.
Yeah.
I hope
So eventually, once this happened, you've then got all of the ice off. The chest is there. It's not a great looking chest. It sort of seems relatively cheap. There is a clasp at the front, but no, like there's space for a padlock, but there isn't a padlock on it. And the whole thing itself is banded, but again, it's a very, very cheap looking thing when you're actually like directly up close with it. Now that the ice is gone, the salty smell is intense, like quite significantly, almost overwhelmingly so. What do you want to do?
Open it.
Yeah. That's in the chest.
Who is it that opens the chest?
I imagine it's Grin, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's
I
Grin.
can't.
Grin has
I
the
can't see
biggest
any way
hands.
that Grin lets anyone else do it.
No.
We all facilitate.
I've spent all this time just getting to the point of like, well, what next then?
and
Ooh,
Grin's the one
that's
who's been doing all the work.
Yeah. And so as you like lift up the flap at the very, very front above which the thing is out, there is this like tiny little like thunk sound as a small dart, probably like about the length of like the top of someone's thumb, juts out and shoots into Grin. That will deal 1 point of damage. Do you have any armor?
Oh, I have armor. Yeah, I have armor.
Nice.
I'm fine. I'll take damage too, though. What do I got to lose?
I'm such a masochist.
We're
Like,
all in it.
Negative 2 D2.
Cool. So yeah, so it's functionally your armor will cut like the lowest you could roll on that would be a 1, which is a nice benefit as this is well, Chris, can you remember what you put on this chest?
Nope.
I will read it. Chiseling it out will take D12 plus 4 hours. It's
Yeah,
trapped. Poison dart. D2 damage. Test toughness. Fought against 14 or die.
I'm dead.
You're not because your armor soaked the thing, so it's safe.
Fuck.
And
That's amazing.
and yeah, so you've got but as you like this thing just like sort of juts in, not quite actually getting like up to flesh level, but you're then able to open the lid, and it just up until the point where the actual like there is a significant sort of like glowing light, like very, very like very cold looking, very blue. But the light itself stops as soon as it like crosses out the path of the top of the chest. Inside, you can see this just tiny little replica I say tiny, it's like the size of like 2 fists. But compared to the huge statue in the corner, but it looks exactly the same.
Ah.
Is it just one?
Yeah. So a single replica in this box. It's sort of been like within the chest, it's been laid down on, it's almost like crepe paper that's sort of been ripped up, and just kind of like, and that, look, it looks a little bit like it's almost like gift wrapped, and just kind of like set on this thing. But yeah, the light, and it, like, you can quite clearly see, like, it's very, very bright against the inside corners of the chest, but none of that light escapes out as soon as it passes the threshold.
I take the tip of my tongue out of my mouth and run it along the miniature statue.
How's it taste?
Imagine what it tastes like.
Imagine what it tastes like.
If you imagine what it tastes like, you will know. One of the things you notice is, again, it's quite like tacky as you're sort of like moving this along. It's kind of like catching on your tongue. Again, you get the impression that it's carved from the exact same material. You wouldn't be surprised if it was actually carved from the exact same blocks or something of bone as this other thing had been carved from. One thing that, like, you can see is that there are more of the sort of like dragonfly style wings on the back of the replica than there are on the actual statue on the wall, or like by the wall.
Cool. To what amount?
There are twice as many.
Okay.
So like
unless Grin stops me, I'm going to pick it up.
I don't stop.
Yeah.
And I'll like take it over and like hold it up next to the other one and look at the dragonfly wings. It just goes like tap 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 on the big one with the little one.
Are there is there any evidence of like wings being broken off of the big statue?
No, and in fact, they're spaced in such a way, so you've kind of got like 2 up, 2 across, 2 down on the big statue, whereas you've essentially got like every single gap between them on this. So it looks like
It's just like a different version.
Yeah, so they're clearly paired, and they're definitely designed in the same sort of way. Like even the bear's face on the smaller statue seems to be like in a slightly different position, but otherwise it's like not quite in the exact same way.
It's fan art.
Yeah, it could be. As Kvetin then like presses this object against, like taps it on, the sort of thing, like it feels for a moment as if they just like pass through each other, and everybody else in the room just sees this, like, again, almost like this blink, but instead of just seeing darkness, it's just like bright blue light, and Kvetin is no longer there, and instead you just see this like incredibly tall, gaunt creature, with like enormous eye sockets, like very, very like heavily receded eyes, incredibly long forearms, just holding this thing there instead, and turning around to face you all. And I think that's another perfect point for a brief break.
What we see is, from Kvetin's standpoint, is looking out of the statue before we go to break and screaming, "No! No!" We will be back after this break to play a little bit more of In the Blue Light. By the way, if you are just joining us, we are giving away a digital copy of this game, both here and over on Twitter. You can go retweet the link on Twitter after following myself and Pangalactic. You can go to @+1EXP to check that out, or hit follow here on the channel, unless you're already a follower, and then hit !Blue Light Special to get entered into a chance to win a digital key for a copy of In the Blue Light. By the way, the Blue Light Special is a totally North American thing, and therefore in no way, shape, or form a reference from Chris or Sean. I checked this very early on in our conversations, but !Blue Light Special will get you entered into a chance to win that. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we'll be back to play some more In the Blue Light. I was hoping Vic would say something cute that time, but they didn't. So we are live here again on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel, playing In the Blue Light. We're at least from a time standpoint in our last few movements of In the Blue Light. But this is such a big and beautiful adventure that you guys are only getting to see a taste of it today for sure, folks. So please go check it out over at ttrpg.link/bluelightgame. But let's hand it back over to Shauna Smith to kill us all.
It's distinctly possible. So the last thing that we saw was after 3 hours of like heating a saw and sawing through this inordinately large block of ice, like perfectly clear ice, surrounding this chest. Opening the chest, to which tiny poison dart pops out. Luckily, just like lands itself in ruffles of armor and of clothes, rather than killing anybody. To which within there's this like small replica of the large statue in the corner, which then Carver picks up and tapped against the actual big one, and then immediately vanished in this enormous blue flash. To be replaced with this very, very long, very, very ugly looking thing, for which I actually went to fetch my copy of the book so I could show you. And it looks a lot like this.
Oh, hell yeah.
Horrible.
I forgot
And in
I put
case-
this in here.
That's my best friend.
And it you know why it got summoned, because look up in the corner, it says lick. And that's
Does
what I
it?
did. That's what I did.
Tony! Tony! Please!
The corner, so obviously within the corner of the room, inside the statue, is then Carver, who's kind of like able to like look out through what almost seems like compound eyes, and again through the tiny little things of this. We will note, of course, that Carver brought
Sorry,
a
wait.
tiny
Carver?
dog.
Carva or Kvetin?
Kvetin.
Kvetin, that's the one, yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm stuck in a statue?
He
And I want to
retconned
point
everything.
out, Kvetin's very good at combat. Like very, very good at hitting things and can soak damage. Can't take a lot of damage. Very good at combat. I'm stuck in the statue, but my dog, Zazie, is out and about.
Yep.
Oh my god.
So I assume that you probably will want to, from a mechanistic point of view, be more dog mode at the moment.
Yeah, probably.
The first thing that happens is this thing just like turns around and sees is it swipes at Grin, kind of tries to give like a huge solid like crack of both, almost like mixture between like a slap and a slam at the same point, sort of like trying to like smack him across the shoulder. So can you roll a defense on that, which would be an agility roll, typically against a 12, although I think you lower the difficulty of agility things by 2 on account of your history. So yeah, so Vic, can I get a defense roll for that?
Of course. That's going to be a 4.
That's not quite enough.
On a D20.
You're not rolling a D100 here, are you? Like,
No, I'm not. I'm definitely rolling the right dice.
excellent stuff. So he
Maybe
will
I'm
hit
getting
you
way too much.
for 6 damage, of which you can soak a D2 of that. So if you want to
Oh
roll,
my god.
Want to roll what?
so roll any dice. If it's odd, you'll take 1 off of that. If it's even, you'll take 2. And then you'll have
It's
an
odd.
overspill. Cool. So yeah, so you've got an overspill of 5 damage that kind of like chunks through and again like throws you off balance, but doesn't
health did
knock
you
you to
have?
the floor.
Now I have 1.
What? Oh boy.
And then this thing, you can feel like the same, almost like it kind of feels like a mixture between like wanting to sneeze and also like when you change pressures very often, like if you're in a plane that lands and you can kind of like feel the pressure on your, that same sort of sensation exists as this
Yeah.
thing just becomes more real in the sense that like if you to turn up the contrast on your vision as you're watching this, it's just more obvious, and it then also just like ever so slightly like floats upwards into the sky. It's now about 5 feet off the ground. Like its legs are kind of like dangling down as this thing is coming up quite close to the ceiling. So not quite as much space to do as it might otherwise be able to, but it will be harder to hit it now. And it's out all of your goes. What would you like to do?
I want to bite it. I'm gonna get some of those bones.
Do it.
It's a nat 20.
Shut up.
Oh my god. So the only way I can assume you can get high enough is almost to parkour style, like rebound off the open top of the chest. Kind of like come up and grab at this thing.
You see Satsi like run up, hit it, backflip through the air, and land on this thing's, I don't know, arm. And that's for 7 damage.
Shut up.
Excellent stuff.
That's hilarious. The dog is going to save us all.
I hope so, because the only weapon I have is a femur.
Again, it's ultimate weapon here.
I could give you my club.
So you managed to, one other thing that's where you scored a critical on that, it will degrade the nature of the armor on this thing. And if anyone's like watching as like Zosimus tries to like bite into this, and again, it's like it's skeletal, but it's not a skeleton. It's just kind of like this like long, like weirdly fleshy thing. But there's a certain amount of almost like static energy that's sort of like trying to keep his jaws apart. And you've functionally like torn through at least a certain part of that. You've bitten so well to have reduced a magical defense down an entire tier.
What a dog.
What a dog.
I'm going to give my actual dog Zosimus some extra treats tonight for just being so good at RP.
Oh, brilliant. And I think it makes sense that you're probably still hanging on at this point here through jaw with that, like the additional ratty parts of the brain just like over intensing at this point here. Grin is probably a little bit like has lost a little bit of wind, but it's kind of stood there as this thing is just like floated up into the sky. This whole thing has probably taken literally about 2 seconds from having opened this thing up, and then from Kvetting going, "Oh, cool. What about this?" And it's just like just horrible, loud chaos.
Love my choices.
What's Grin do?
Grin will go in with. Well, I can't really throw it, so that's not really going to help me out too much. I feel like Grin's gonna like kind of double back and see what everybody else is doing, but like, I don't know. I can't hit him with my staff, but
I mean, you could potentially like it will be harder to hit, but you could potentially reach up because he's only 5 feet off the ground. And assuming the staff is relatively long, it wouldn't be as effective as if like it was still stood on the ground. But
no, you're right. No, you know what? I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to whack him like a piñata. That seems like an effective way of living my life.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. So you want to roll a strength check, and you're aiming to hit 12.
Right, strength check, and let's see if we hit 12. We did not hit 12. We hit wait, no, we did. We definitely hit 12. Okay, nice. Never mind. I love when I switch tabs and see the wrong number.
So roll for damage, and then we'll see how much is soaked.
Alrighty. Damage. Alrighty. See how you go. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow. That is 1 point of damage. That is a 1.
His necro barrier absorbs a kind of like a single point of that, so you can see as your like strike goes there, it almost like ricochets around his like aura, but also not quite. But you can you almost only see it when you're kind of like boffing it there, and it's possibly just the angle at which you're sort of doing that. It just like spreads out around. What about our priests?
Where's the miniature statue right now?
At the moment, it's kind of like, so it was held hand, like, so the lich was holding its hand, like holding its hand, was holding it as a complete swap from Kvetin.
Okay.
It's now fallen to the floor.
I want to pick up the statue and I want to slam it in the lid of the chest and try and break it.
Ooh. I think, yeah, give me a strength roll to see how well it goes.
What is my strength? Oh, God. Oh, good. +0.
It's not bad, to be fair.
I mean, it's not a minus. That's a natural 20.
Hey!
I'm going to tweet that so that you can see it.
So this, and again, as you like bring it down on the edge of that, because although the chest has kind of like been carted off, it's still like it's frozen solid with water. It's completely, it's like very, very like stiff. And as you like smash this thing down, it's made of like carved bone, and this thing just like shatters into all of these shards. What you can see from the larger statue is like slow cracks start sort of like pushing across the entirety of the surface of this thing here. It is like the edges of the actual like broken statue are sort of like still like sticking to your hand as you just like smashed it on this thing. But the statue itself is like starting to fall apart. In that it will eventually, just left to its own devices, entirely shatter, or it's quite possible that Kvetin could even get out more quickly.
Hell yeah.
I was like, this is either going to be really good for me or really bad for me. One of the two. I don't know yet.
No middle ground.
Seeing it to start to crumble, I'll run up and give it a good old smack with my club.
Nice. The statue, I'm assuming, rather than the floaty horror.
I was going to hit the lich, but now there's a better option.
Nice. So give me a strength roll.
Oh, I did want to ask. Just because, lore is different for every setting, what is and isn't an animal is different everywhere. Is a lich an animal?
Not really.
Okay.
Like is animalistic, but not an animal.
Okay, that's fair. And the answer I expected. It just would have been fun. All right, that is... Oh boy, that's a 9.
I'm assuming you don't have a +3 in your strength.
My strength is +0.
So I mean, it's helping. It's definitely like you're managing to dislodge. You're managing to dislodge more of the pieces as you're sort of like spattering away at this thing, but not quite enough for Kvetin to be able to get out this entire turn. So in the next round, tell you what, Nevin, can you roll me 1d6?
Yeah, I'll roll the pretty one. A 6.
Hey, so it's yourselves who go next.
Am I here?
Nice.
Sorry.
The dream has gone down.
We'll find out.
It's
We've
still
got Tony
up.
back.
Yeah, I don't know. I have zero idea what happened. I lost my connection to Google Meets.
And now we're all in different spots.
We're all
but
now
we're
in different
still
spots because it shuffled y'all around when I was gone. But it's fine. It's fine. That's part of just the necromantic magic swirling around all of us.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When we did the Troll King one, the end of the stream got real cursed.
It did get real weird. Real
and so
fast.
this may be happening again. This may be a hallmark signature of
Chris's
Bissette writing, is that it curses
Why I
the
don't
stream
very often.
So.
Curse Bissette.
Oh,
I rolled a 6.
Nice. So the other thing in a lot of like old school like nostalgia stabby dungeon games, these sorts of things, there tends to be side-based initiatives, so whichever side goes at any given point. And in this case, it's handled in Mork Borg by dice is rolled each turn, 4, 5, or 6. It's the players who go first. 1, 2, or 3. It's the monsters who go first. So you get to chain together. You've had a thing. You can now do more things.
Can I try and hit this again?
Yes, you can.
Great. 3, baby.
You can definitely try.
It's you're loosening it up a bit in a way.
I don't know if you have any more, Nevin, but also since we know we're almost done, I don't know if you have any more omens or not. You can use them to re-roll as well.
Yes, I will. Hey, that's an 18. All right.
Hey, nice.
I have 1 omen left.
Amazing. Roll me some damage.
Oh boy. That's a 3.
Hey, I rolled a 2, so you've beaten it. So you've managed to like functionally shatter enough of this thing that Kvetin can pretty much like try and step out and so like step out and step through. So like an entire chunk of it, like the thigh and like the left boob, just kind of just go like thunk down onto the floor next to you. And Kvetin's kind of like stood in there, presumably tongue out on the inside of the statue.
And you hear it's time to get a lick, but you don't know whether you don't know what he said really at all, but it's very hard, even if you could, to know whether he said it's time to get licked or it's time to get lich. It's one of the two, but you have no idea which one.
Excellent
Just
stuff.
say like, yeah, okay, whatever. Get out, do your fucking job.
Did we even establish what his job is?
Hitting things, I guess.
All right, cool.
So Tony, you're up. What do? Bear in mind, you have two combatants that can do things.
And 1 HP.
So I am I entirely free of this thing, or am I just mostly free of this thing?
You're mostly free. Like, it won't take you in. Like, you could do it. Basically, you can't move across the room and do stuff, but you can entirely
No, it's fine.
move
But the
out.
lich is right in front of me. I'm going to try to push some of the bone carapace off of me onto the lich. Like, my attack is improvised weapon, boulder drop right in front of me.
Yeah, like get the statue, attack with the statue. Yeah, so give me a strength roll.
That's going to be 17 for me, and it's D4 for improvised weapon, right?
Typically, but I figure with the sheer size of this, if you want to roll a D6.
Okay, so it's going to be a 5.
Ooh, nice. Could I also get an agility roll from Zosimus?
Zosimus rolled a 17 on their agility roll.
Hey. So it's this whole thing like smashes round. I was going to say was like shift out of the side of this thing, and the stuff like crashes into the side of the lich, who like bobs a little bit in the air, kind of like scoots over and like readdresses and like kind of like takes the additional height up.
Kind of like I'm imagining one of those like those weeble wobble things you like punch, they bounce back and bounce back up.
Yeah. It looks exactly that, but like the angle of balance is kind of like from the top of the head, like the sort of, like, the crown section.
And then Zosmus rolled a 13 to hit.
Nice. So roll for some damage as well.
So I think what we see is like Zosmus get like flipped over, like as this thing gets hit back around the arm, and then like comes back around and like latches onto the shoulder, and does 4 damage again.
Incredible.
Good thing I brought this dog with us.
So at this point here is like tearing through like something almost like piercing through. Like weirdly, once you actually manage to get through to the skin, it's just like papery thin, and everything beneath is nothing. There's sort of like spaces out between. You notice that the high contrast has sort of appeared when it like started floating, and sort of like dimmed down a bit. It's sort of almost like graying out a little part. What is Torn going to do at this point with like a handful of bone shards? I mean, you don't have to do anything with the bone shards, but that's just...
I'm going to drop them because they're basically useless to me now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my femur, which I assume I found on the journey here. I'm just going to fucking throw it at the thing.
Nice. So ranged attacks are presence rolls, and you're looking to hit a 12.
Cool. My stats are actually fine. Like, they're all +0 apart from toughness, which is a +2. So...
it's a high stat.
7. I hit 7.
It's a high stat. Mork Borg
Again,
party.
if you've got an omen, you could re-roll.
I'm going to use one of my omens, yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Quick question: how do you
That's 20.
fuck off?
I'm gonna tweet another picture.
I was gonna ask, how do you like regain omens?
So they
Or-
come back each day, basically.
Okay. Is it like one a day, or do you recharge
It's
up to
D,
whatever?
it's D whatever
Oh,
the
I
amount
see.
you get is.
D4 here. So
Yeah.
we take a nap. I wake up. I roll D4.
Right. And
Yeah.
and
It varies based on who you are. So like some like some of the character classes get higher ones. The standard, if you're basically classless, you get D2.
Okay, that's cool.
I am going to use an omen though, because I'm going to use an omen to do max damage
Amazing.
on the crit. Whatever damage. The theme was meant to be D4. I don't know if it's going to do that with throwing it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It would still hit for the same thing.
and it's since it's crit, it's twice, right?
Yeah, so you're both dealing extra damage, and rather than
So
just rolling and
you'll
doubling
do
it.
8 damage instead of.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it is going to utterly destroy this creature. At this point here, it like
Does the witch say, "Throw me a bone here"?
It's like, throw me a bone here! And like smashes into it, and it
Good lich voice.
like almost like it's like it's peeling apart on the other part there with the chunks of like fallen bone from the statue that have kind of like torn through it on one side, Zozzy having like ripped some other parts here, and just the pressure from like an incredibly well placed femur straight to the sternum section almost like inverts it, and the whole thing turns inside out like a balloon animal almost. And again, you can just feel almost, but it kind of like thuds back into the back into where the statue was. It's kind of like part of the energy on this here, and that salt smell that was here just like immediately goes. And again, you sort of like feel like the pressure that was sort of like there in your sinuses and in your ears entirely like settles back down to nothing here. And there's just a sort of like tiny little sound that you hear of like the last little bit of deflation. And the bearded man from the previous room just kind of like wanders up to the edge of the room that you just sort of like turned up to, looks across to you all and says, "I thought you would definitely have the end of you. Huh. Maybe you are good enough to go and find the basilisk's bones for me then." And that's where the episode ends.
Excellent.
So yeah, let's before we fully wrap up, let's spin things on. We'll get a like an epilogue from each person's perspective. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your character, but it relates to your character. So for instance, nobody died. Had someone died, it could have been like looking at like the gap or so on that they'd left behind. So let's begin in this case. We will end on Chris. From let's go in reverse alphabetical order. Here we go. And so yeah, so to begin with, and we can see this like maybe like a month or so later. What do we see of Grin?
I think Grin has removed the beard the fake beard, as it has caused too many problems, and is very happy with fire. Like, Grim gets to light the things Grim needs to get lit, but it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. But it's a simple pleasure to Grim. Just like whenever the spark happens, he's good, but he still has a lot of shame in regard to the time he spent on that chest, only to almost harm them.
Excellent. What about Kvetin and Zozzy?
I think what we see like Zazie coming up over a hillside that in any other type of game would be green and picturesque and pastoral, and this one there's a dead tree at the top at the top of a threadbare hill that overlooks a graveyard. Carrying the bone. It's a full forearm with a couple of finger bones still, right, running up to Kvetin, who looks down and pats Zazie on the head and says, "Thank you so much." And as they finish, we see their tongue kind of gently lash out of their mouth, but it looks like that of almost a spectral basilisk's tongue instead.
Glorious. And what do we see of Carver?
Carver became a lich. Carver was like, "Oh, these are real. Something in my notes was right. I'm gonna go do that."
Excellent stuff. And finally, what about Torn?
So, I think, are we assuming that we did find the basilisk bones underneath?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like a
yeah. So I
like
think
a solid end.
Having realized that Carver actually was right the whole time, and not knowing where Carver has gone, I think Torn has kind of dedicated himself to studying Carver's notes and trying to figure out how to use these bones, and it's slowly morphing into Carver that was.
You realize the notes are initially like about the thing that we were there to do, and like halfway through it starts becoming about like lich theory, and you're like, wait.
I'm like
draws connections. You heard about a lich on the other side.
Yeah, I'm like a year and a half behind you, and we don't know yet whether I'm gonna like seek you out and kill you or be like, this sounds kind of cool actually.
I'm imagining two very old ancient liches just hanging out and bickering at each other.
With the bones of these basilisks, completely untouched.
Yeah.
The world racked by miseries.
Could have saved it, didn't do it. I went into the blue light and all I got was these lousy bones.
And yeah, so friends and enemies, that has been Into the Blue Light. So thank you all for your attention and your wonder.
Awesome. We are going to slide right into our reaction roll. What is reaction roll? Reaction roll is a live stream inside of a live stream. It's our chance to sit down with the creator of a game that we just played and talk to them about that game. Today we are sitting down and talking about In the Blue Light, a Mork Borg compatible adventure by Chris Bissette that we, I'm not going to lie, barely scratched the surface of. There is so much cool stuff in this. This is an adventure that you could spend a long time just kind of getting through, poking around in, and we were like, cool, here's the entryway, here's the living room, I'm gonna check the bathroom, that's it. That's how far in we got, but I had a blast playing it. Chris, for people who aren't familiar with your work, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, and where they can find you online?
Yeah, I'm a full-time toy maker. I write games and adventures and music and stuff. You can find all of my work at loottheroom.io. That's got links to everything that I do, including the podcast that I just started. I do a lot of shit. There's not enough time in the day. And you can find me on Twitter shouting about games at Pangalactic, PANGALACTIC.
Awesome. Well, I love getting a chance to play again. I was super glad you reached out because I was gonna if you didn't. Tell us a little bit about In the Blue Light.
Yeah, it's an adventure from Mork Borg. I don't know if you noticed that over the past 2 hours. This was Treasures of the Troll King was a very small dungeon crawl, and I wanted to write something a bit more substantial. I really like a lot of the Mork Borg adventures that exist that I've seen are really geared towards like 1 and 2 shot play, and I wanted to write something that would last over not a campaign. It's not like play this module for 6 months or a year, but they would support like 5 or 6 sessions worth of play. So the intention is like there's lots of shit to dig out of the walls. There's lots of cool stuff to explore. There's bits of the dungeon that are behind collapsed walls that you need to tunnel out and stuff. And the idea was that like the characters would spend a lot of time in the dungeon and the players would spend a lot of time in the dungeon. Trying to channel like classic mega dungeon vibes in something that's not anywhere near as big as a mega dungeon, basically.
Love it. Well, I had a blast playing. Let's hear from some of the other folks about what they thought was. Let's start with Nevin, because it's Nevin's first time to play Mork Borg at all. This is a great introduction. It was great to have you. Nevin, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, but also what it was like to go in the blue light.
Yeah, hey, once again, my name is Nevin. I use he, they pronouns. You can find my stuff at nevin.games or at dinoberryjam.com if you want to buy physical versions. I'm a queer ttrpg designer. I've collaborated with Chris before on a game called Kitchen Nightmares. A hack of this Discord has ghosts in it. It's a Discord-based mystery game about time-lost knights and a wizard in a diner in the 90s. And I also wrote and designed Gun and Slinger, which is super, super good. A Mork Borg kind of slaps.
Awesome.
You hear it? Have y'all heard about this? Have y'all heard about this Mork Borg game? I think it's gonna catch on. It's pretty cool. I think it'll catch on. I had a lot of fun. Chris writes some truly, truly fantastic stuff. And the fact that this is only like a little taste, just a little sampler, is incredibly exciting.
Awesome. Do you have any questions that you want to ask Chris about the adventure or anything else?
Yes, but I can't think of how to word them right now.
All right, we'll hop back. We can hop back to you in just a second if you want.
No, I got one. I'm really curious about the system at the beginning where we like rolled for the essentially bad omens, or like the warnings and stuff like that. What was the process like for creating those? Because there were a couple of things that came up as we played where I was like, oh, is this the old man? Is this?
Yeah. I really like rumors in adventures, and that's essentially a rumor table. Even though they're like things that the priestess tells you, they are like distinct from adventure hooks in that they are information that you might have gathered as characters about the place you're going to that may or may not be true. And the way I use them is I write down all the cool shit I might want to put in the dungeon. And then I write the dungeon, and if I get stuck, I go and pick one of my rumors and just put that in. And then the ones that don't get used end up being false. Is how I use them. But the old man specifically is word for word one of the rumors from Rot Black Sludge, which is the introductory adventure in Mork Borg. But in Rot Black Sludge, that's a false rumor. So in the blue light, it's a true rumor. Because
was it that naked guy we met?
Yeah, because in Rot Black Sludge, there's an old man sitting at a dining table who's completely mute, and he doesn't react when you poke or prod him. And if you all sit down at the table with him, he starts talking, but otherwise he doesn't do anything. And so I wanted to like do a little throwback to that.
It was super fun when we hit that point in the adventure. I was like, wait a minute.
Callbacks.
Oh,
Easter
I
eggs.
was also
Plagiarism.
We can come back to me. I have a follow-up question about the statues, but we can come back to me.
I mean, okay, sure. I will, but you can go ahead and ask it. Also, if anybody's watching right now, they have questions they want to ask, they can. But we'll hop over to Vic first. Vic, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, and what it was like to play in the blue light.
I make games. I tell spooky stories, and I occasionally like do stuff in a totally different industry. And I'm at Major tomorrow. The old man question was answered, so I have other ones. What is your favorite texture you have in your adventure that we might not have seen today or felt today?
I don't know, because a lot of the textures came from Sean. There is a corridor in the south of the dungeon and a series of like 3 or 4 rooms that are completely covered in ectoplasmic slime, which I was very excited to see Tony lick, but we didn't get to.
I was trying to get there as quickly as I could, but we didn't quite make it to that point.
Yeah, slime's a good texture. I put slime in a lot of my stuff.
Slime is
I
quality.
watched a lot of Nickelodeon as a kid.
Any other questions, Vic?
No, not at the moment.
Awesome. Sean, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, but also tell us what it was like to run in the Blue Light.
So yeah, so I'm Sean Smith, he and him, and I am a magician, games designer, writer, menace, things. If you want to find me on the internet, you can do so at Sean F. Smith in many places. Some of them have underscores between the letters, some of them don't. Experiment, see what you find. It'll be fun. It entirely depends on where it came about. But running this was really easy, to the point where I did. So the first time when Chris first sent the file through, I gave it a quick read, and then I only ever read it again today, about an hour before we started. One of the things that, so as a book, those of you who haven't seen Mork Borg, which I have my copy here, because I had to go and look it up, because there are at least several different sections in this adventure where it's like, this thing exists. You've already got it in that book. Go and find it. So most of the book is beautiful and over the top. There we go. Very, very fancy things. But the sections where the dungeon itself exists is just very, very clean and incredibly like crisply written in such a way that you can pull out the details very, very quickly. So I essentially just gave it another skim read an hour before we started, so that I could then literally look up the facts there and then as we turned up at the rooms. And what I really liked about it is that there's lots of potential, and I'm very much mean that from like an energetic perspective within the space, where there's just lots of different things that you can just kind of like prod at and poke and just see, and they're not necessarily all bad. A lot of them are, because it's Mork Borg, and there's just a lot of it's like, hey, do you want some bad things here? Bad things happen. But all of them was like feel very, very like sensible and realistic for a world that otherwise is quite nonsense and over the top. So it was fantastic to play that, and again to play it in such a different setting. So Chris's last work on this type, the one that I think we played it a year ago, pretty much. Treasures of the Troll King these are some real places that you could have seen. There's like a ruined chapel underneath. There's some sewers that you're kind of like going through. Whereas this is just, it has that intense sense of awe where there's just this place that is different and weird and strange. And I thought that was really nice to run through it, really evocative and genuinely enjoyable as a place because it's so distinct and still very, very harsh. I'm a huge fan of The Thing. I should say the remake, so the 1982 version, but that one in particular about just the bleakness of it all and all of the stuff in the background.
That's what you were gonna put up.
Yeah.
So good.
And so just kind of like the vibes of just that. You are just in the middle of nowhere and there is this stuff that's not nice. I think it's really good. I do have a question for Chris, and it's not about the module, but it's about how the module talks to like the connected things, I suppose. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And this isn't about how like the production values, so there can be like very high production values and very low production values for the same settings. What do you think makes a dungeon really good?
That's a hard question to answer briefly. So you said about it has like in Blue, it has a lot of potential, like things that you can poke at, and that for me is what makes a good dungeon, which is why I write stuff in that manner. The term I've been using recently is catalysts for play. So rather than putting like, here is a thing and this is exactly what it does. I like to put things in and just be like, here is a thing that you can poke, and like trust the players and the GM and the group and the table dynamic that they will come up with something way more inventive and interesting than anything I could ever come up with. It's a fine line between not doing any writing and making something good. And I don't know which side I fall on with my own work on that, but I try to fall on the side of good more often than lazy, with mixed success. But yeah, interactivity and just cool shit that makes you go, I want to touch that and see what happens, I think is what makes for a good dungeon.
Yeah. I think it felt like it landed with this one as well, which is really nice.
Thank God for that.
I had a blast. I'm Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist at +1EXP at +1EXP on the internet, or at Tony Vicenda anywhere also too. But if usually at +1EXP is where I'm paying attention to on social media. I had such a blast. You sent me a preview copy ahead of time, and I intentionally didn't read a number of sections because I was like, I want to get a sense of everything about this so I can give good feedback and input and talk about it with you a little bit. But I also left significant sections. But the one that I just went back and actually read through was the running of the maze. I basically got to the point where you talk about how to run the maze, which we didn't get to the maze at all, which is fine. Because I feel like lots of times in Mork Borg, we see dungeons, we see open world role play. A good solid maze is something that you don't see in a lot of RPG adventures, period, because I think a lot of GMs are intimidated by them. It's such an interesting thing because it is a trope we, I think, very closely associate with dungeon delving, but most dungeons are not actually mazes, right? The mapping that you would do is going to be logical and make sense, and it's not necessarily hyper complex maze level stuff. Even as you scale out to the mega dungeon level, actual mazes can be very challenging. And you just did the genius, super smart thing of making it a hex crawl, basically. Like you took a hex map and laid it over the top of the dungeon, which makes it super easy with the walls and the hexes to know how something could move through this space, because there are some things down there as well as us. It's such a cool piece of tech. Did you see that somewhere, or was that just like a Chris Bissette original?
I guess it's an original. It was tough because I wanted to do a maze. I wanted to do a chase, specifically a chase through a maze. And mazes in tabletop games 80% of the time really fucking suck. They're sure to run.
Yeah, very bad.
And Mork Borg doesn't have any movement speeds, and doesn't have grids, and doesn't have distances. And I was like, how do you do a maze like this? And so I just, for the players, I turned it into a point crawl, and for the pursuers, I just put hexes on and just said to the GM, they move 3 hexes towards the players every turn, and it just works. I think maybe it still sucks. I don't know.
No, I said, I went back. Like I said, I'd read it and I was like, oh man, I want to look at the rest of this, but I also want to potentially play it, which we did, which is fine. It's okay. But yeah, it's just a super smart, really clean way to do especially like the shape of this. And I popped up on the screen so people could see the top down, just plain view of the maze. It's such an organic shape that also just sings really well to the system. The art in the game is tremendous. But it's such a great piece of very simple tech that I'm like, this is how you should do a maze. Like, especially if you want a very light, you don't want to get super granular about movement speed, don't want to have to do anything else. It's such a smart way to be able to explore. And players can just say like, okay, we want to, we're moving forward, moving this way, we're going to take the left, we're going to take the right. But even just printing it out as the GM, it would be easy to track where everything was, which I think for GMs is a lot of the reason we don't do it, because we have to know the maze well enough to feel comfortable letting people loose inside of it and knowing we can track it.
One of the things I deliberately did was, after I drew the maze and it had the right solution, was I basically jacqueed it a little bit and just put holes in walls so that there are multiple solutions to the maze, so that it doesn't suck when players go down a dead end and don't know how to get back.
Right.
It's a very, very easy maze to solve, but hopefully the existence of a couple of big, horrible enemies in it will make it less easy.
I love it. And then the other question. I know there's a couple of what look like stock art pieces, but where did the art for this come from? Because the visual design is just tremendous.
I did it all myself. Okay. So there are, some of it is public domain art that I've like drawn over the top of. Some of it, I think I've drawn some original stuff for it. I think. But yeah, it's a lot of public domain art and photo bashing and just sketching over things and painting on top of things until it looks the way I want it to look.
Yeah. And one of the things I think I know, like, Mork Borg has the aesthetics of a Mork Borg game are important, and a lot of what we see is, this is really my last thought, and then I'll kick it back over to Nevin or everybody else who wants to say things or ask questions. And I know I said this, I know I've said it a lot, but like the tendency for Mork Borg is to look at it and then kind of rinse, wash, repeat, and you still get a lot of really good content out of that. So I don't want to do that, but I think especially visually, you don't see the kind of flexing on the Mork Borg template that I really appreciate in a way that you have done. And so, because the reality is the color scheme, like you have some of the key yellow, black pieces in there, but obviously you put a lot of blues and greens and other pieces into this, and it feels very visually distinctive, as well as the writing being very, very, very distinctive. And anybody out there who's like, I don't run Mork Borg, would I like this? Like, if you're in any D20 plus stat system, like you can grab any Mork Borg adventure and run it in your system, right? Like, it may not be fun because you're not using a system that does it, but if it's an OSR system especially, like, you're going to be fine. I just am always so blown away by the way that you kind of bend and flex out and then push out completely in new directions with both the visual design and the writing. And I just wanted to comment on it again, because it is very clearly something that is Mork Borg while still having a totally unique vibe to it. And I think that's the hard space that a lot of people don't hit when they're creating content for it. It doesn't mean that games aren't beautiful. It doesn't mean I don't love playing them or any of those types of things. It's just singularly really amazing work. But Nevin, you said you had another question.
Yeah. What was the specific trigger for the Lich encounter?
It's a good question. I wish I could remember the answer to.
I just tapped it because there would be no reason for my character to be like, I'd like to make a presence roll to activate this article. So I was like, which is I think is actually like,
oh, like a magic check or something.
Yeah,
like that.
basically.
Oh, okay.
And because it's got a blue light to it that kind of like signals there's something weird about this, and it interacts with the statue in a very clear way, so it wouldn't be too hard. But I knew we were close, and so I was like, I'm just going to hand this over to Sean and be like, I'm
just going to do the
I'm
main
going to
thing.
tap it and see if
Gotcha.
see if Sean wants to punish us or not.
My favorite thing about that, now that I remember the encounter, is that the specific thing with the magic with that little statue is that it just swaps people. So when you find it, it's got a lich trapped in it, and if
the little one does,
okay. Or the big one does. The little one's like a trigger for the big one.
Gotcha.
So if you fuck with it, it swaps you in the lich, and then textually, like as written, the only way to get you out of the statue is to swap places with someone else. And I just it's one of there's a few moments in the adventure that are real like fuck you moments. And
like the chest that could have just killed us.
Yeah, I forgot about that entirely.
It's so funny.
Hey, you spent 3 hours digging out this chest and you're dead, and now your friend is trapped in a statue and there's a lich.
Welcome to Mork Borg.
I forgot about that encounter.
Yeah, but it's also that's such a fun item potentially for later if you want to be other places in the dungeon and rotating through party members for weird reasons. You know, like there is
an Ectoplasm in it. See what happens.
Yeah, there you go. And so...
Something that I've heard, it's not just like my first time playing Mork Borg, but kind of my first time directly engaging with like OSR school of stuff as a player, and not just like reading it. And something that I've heard said about the OSR from a player perspective is that like it's very much about taking very basic rules and seeing how you can bend them and like what you can try. And it was very, very cool to see that in action in this dungeon. Like it was super, super sick.
Mhm.
Hell yeah.
Mork as well. And I saw like I do like I think you hit it. I think especially when you were talking in your conversation with Sean, like hitting that perfect space of it's the line between like lazy writing and giving people just enough to know what that's such a key spot. It also means GMs have to be very comfortable with making rulings at the table because like it would have been very fine to be like, okay, you smash it, Kvetten's stuck in there forever, right? That's an option, right? Totally. Especially in a one shot where you don't have to worry about it, like, or you've got to figure out some other way to get them out, or do you even know they're in there because that's never been communicated or anything? So, like, but again, like those, like giving people really broken, accursed things to play around with is a tremendously fun part of OSR, and this adventure does it very well. Any other thoughts, questions, things you want to toss out?
No, I'm good.
I have one question that didn't really come up at this point here, but there's a lot of wick heads, like in the walls or just kind of like lying around.
Yeah.
Why?
They're my favorite thing in Mork Borg. Just little weird dudes with candles for heads. I just think.
And the little what guys?
Weird dudes.
Wick heads.
Wick heads. So they're little hunched.
Nevin's like, wait a minute.
They've got like candles for heads, and they are hirelings rather than monsters. So you don't fight them. You can enlist them to come with you. So there's one frozen in the walls with his light flame out, and there's one of the random encounters is just a dude you can meet wandering around the dungeon who's got a wick head on a chain that he's hired to bring with him. I just think there's one in Treasures of the Troll King in the sewers as well. I just think they're super weird little dudes, and I want them to be my friends, and I'm going to put them in everything I ever write for Mork Borg because they're so unique to the game. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the game that is like, oh, it's a skeleton, oh, it's a lich, oh, it's a troll. The wickheads are just like super cool. I really like them.
I know. I just looked them up.
Weird
Extremely sick.
Yeah,
love a freaky little guy.
Yeah, I love a weird
little dudes. Awesome. Any other last thoughts or questions? Awesome. Chris, I know that you've already released it. It's up over on your site. You can go to loottheroom.io to find all Chris's stuff, or go to ttrpg.link/bluelightgame to go straight to the Loot the Room website, order a physical copy or link out to where all the digital places are available that you can pick them up as well. I know that you have done a couple of upgrades for this. This was not a crowdfunding effort. This is just a straight release. But two things I want to give you a chance to talk about is one, how has that been? What's the release process been like? And then are there any other funding projects you want to talk about right now that people should know about?
Sure. It's been really good. If I'd done it on Kickstarter, I think I probably would have made a silly amount of money like I did with Troll King. But I don't want to use Kickstarter anymore. And I've sold about 200 copies of it, which I'm really happy with. I think for like an independent release done through my website as pre-orders, I absolutely can't complain about that. And we're going to get a foil stamped cover that's going to be super cool. It's going to look really good. Troll King's got a foil stamping on the cover as well, and it looks great. And it's going to be printed the same way as Troll King, and I can't wait to see it. And yeah, because we're not doing it via Kickstarter, it means that like the digital edition is already out. If you go and buy it on itch, or if you buy a physical copy, you get access to the digital edition immediately. The physical ones, I think I will get hold of. I think they'll arrive next week, and they'll start going in the mail next week. But you can also if you go to bit.ly/bluelight free, you can read the entire text of the adventure for free online as well. There's no like layout or anything. It's just a plain HTML site, but you can go read it. And if you like it, you can throw some money at it. Cool. Is there anything? Unquiet Dark finished yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had just finished yesterday, but
that's cool.
Go ahead and tell people about Unquiet Dark anyways.
Yeah, Unquiet Dark is A Brindlewood Bay prequel campaign that I'm writing with Alicia Furness, who is like the world's foremost expert on Brindlewood Bay. They've written more Brindlewood Bay than even Jason has. And it is a prequel campaign of mysteries set in the 1920s, in 1922. So we're doing jazz era Eldritch horrors. We funded for 4 mysteries. We might write a couple more. We had a stretch goal to get to 8, and I know we're both really excited to write more of them, so we might just do it anyway, but we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It takes you through a year in Brindlewood Bay. It takes you through a year in 1922 during the Depression, at the height of the jazz era, with weird eldritch shit. We've got a new dark conspiracy. We've got a new cult to investigate. We've got new murders. We've got sex, drugs, and all that good shit.
Jazz.
Yeah, sex, drugs, and jazz.
Awesome. I'm super excited. We got to interview the two of you a little while ago about it. Also, at some point, we're going to play the adventure with Alicia's mom and some folks. So
yeah, we are.
So it may just be the 4 of us, but as far as the actual the people playing. But I am very excited. When we were interviewing live, I was like, "Yeah, we'll try to get it back to play." And then Alicia's mom was like, "I'll play." I was like, absolutely. So just listen to you. If you're a designer and your mom wants to come on and ever play a game with us, I'll do it 100%, 0 questions asked. If your mom wants to come play a game with us on stream, the answer is always going to be yes. And so
That's amazing.
So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I love the design work that Chris does. I want to encourage people. There are a lot of people out there who do amazing work in the games industry. Some of those people have made the jump to full time. Figuring out how the best way to support those creators is huge. Chris is one of those. Matt is one of those who I absolutely love, who's over in the UK also. Gian Shim, who's got a project, The Snow Queen, live right now, is another one. People who are doing just tremendous work, who absolutely deserve your support. And a lot of them have been trying to move away from Kickstarter as a platform. So please, if you're able to go support this, do. Just one last reminder, if you have not had a chance yet, hit !Blue Light special to get entered in your chance to give it for a giveaway. I'm going to pick that copy in just 1 minute. There's also a tweet over on Twitter. You can go retweet. But a couple things coming up that we want to remind people about. If you are able to, we would really love your support on 13 Hunters. Right now, we are pretty far behind the curve on funding for this project. It's over on GameFound. It is the only RPG as part of Zine Month that was funding over on GameFound. So it doesn't have a lot of the support ecosystem that it would normally get. It's a system and setting agnostic set of bounty hunters. It's absolutely visually stunning and gorgeous. Nuclear Obelisk, the writer and artist for it, has done a tremendous job with it. We're just helping him get the word out. And a lot of people have been following it, really like it, are very complimentary of it. What we really need right now is people to go back it. So if you're able to head over to ttrpg.link/13h and check it out, we would love your support. If you're not interested in it, if you just share it with people you know who might be, that would be incredibly helpful. A couple other things we have coming up tomorrow. We've got Sam Amelli, aka Skullboy, who's going to be on talking to us as part of our monthly celebration of all things Exalted Funeral. They are our guest for Funeral Party. What we do on Funeral Party is we talk about the latest and greatest from Exalted Funeral, which is a publishing company we work with a lot. We also summon the future ghost of a designer to come and talk to us from beyond the veil about their life and work and what happened in the future. So please come back tomorrow and join us. We had a couple other live streams scheduled for this week, and with everything going on in the world, we may be canceling some of those, so just keep an eye over on Twitter at +1EXP for whether or not we're going to. It's really going to depend on how creators are feeling about where the world is at right now, not to bring us down horribly at the end of a stream. But it's a stressful and crazy time out there right now, and has been for a while. But yeah, there's that. We also have the Together We Go jam. So if you like rules light, minimalist OSR style creation, Together We Go is a narrative forward dungeon crawling system created for Down We Go. The Together We Jam is a chance for creators to come together and make content for Down We Go, Through the Void, DungeonDelvers.tv by KaganEXE, or create completely new systems using the Together We Go concept. It's a tremendously easy system to create in. So if you're looking to dive into OSR for the first time, but like more narrative and story forward stuff, please come check it out. You can go to itch.io/jam/TWJ, or I'll drop that in the chat in just 1 second. That's a whole lot of stuff. You find out more about it at +1EXP. Follow us anywhere at that level. We don't have a good way that we end live streams. So until next time, I'm just going to wave at the camera and along with everybody else until I take us offline. Bye, everybody.
Bye.